Chapter 227. You managed to get your hands on a Saint Spirit herb? Black Hammer's interest was piqued. Saint Spirit herb? Theo put away his smile and sneered. You don't need the church's medicine to cure the patients infected with the demonic plague. He took 2 small leather bags from his waist and put them on the table. Blaming it on the witches is just their usual trick anyway, the dead can't refute it. Black Hammer picked up one of the bags in confusion and shook it next to his ear. Then he untied the rope and sniffed it. No smell. You take it and give it to the silver ring and the pot to drink, then you will know whether it is the real medicine or not, Theo said. These 2 should still be in the tavern. Ever since I found out they were infected, I told them to hide in the basement and not come out. Now, the black spot patients are easily attacked by the citizens, and the skeleton fingers won't open the door to let them in. Black Hammer picked up the sack. Sir, I'll give it a try. After he got up and left, Hill was still staring at the table, not saying a word, which made Theo secretly shake his head. For an ordinary person who had been living under the ravages of the demonic plague, when he heard that there was a medicine that could cure the disease, how could he be so calm? Even if they weren't so excited that they wanted to snatch it for a look, they would at least ask a few more questions. As an intelligence officer, this performance was really not up to standard. Can this medicine really cure the demonic plague? Littlefinger shouted, Your Excellency, where did you get it? Even the little girl was better than him. Theo drank a glass of wine. Of course, it was the lord of the palace who gave it to me. Besides him, who else would dare to go against the church? After a while, Black Hammer returned with the silver ring and the clay pot. Oh my God, this medicine is incredible. Not long after they drank it, the black spots on their bodies disappeared. My lord, thank you for your potion. The 2 of them knelt on the ground. The cracked skin of the clay pot was still dripping with blood. You saved our lives. Let's first bandage the wound. Theo waved his hand. Although the purifying water was able to get rid of the disease, it was unable to heal the wound. If the seriously injured person wanted to fully recover, it would take at least a week or so. Rather than thanking me, it would be better to thank my employer. If you complete this mission well, you might even have a chance to get rid of your identity as rats. Your Majesty? No, I mean, does your employer really want us to sell the medicine? Black Hammer asked excitedly. Obviously, he also realized that selling special potions at this time could bring in a lot of money. That's right. The church's use of this method to deceive the citizens has made him extremely angry. If this bunch of scammers continue to do this unscrupulously, I'm afraid that the entire King's City will become a cathedral instead of the territory of the Wimbledon family. Theo said in a low voice. In addition, he doesn't want to see such a big city with only a few living people, so the price of the potion absolutely cannot be too high. It must be affordable for the majority of the civilians. He then took out 2 leather bags and threw them on the table. A bag like this can only sell for 10 silver royals at most. 10 silver royals? Black Hammer's eyes widened. That's right. 6 will go to my employer, and the rest will belong to you. He opened his palm and said, The potion is enough for 5,000 to 6,000 people, so you'll get at least a few hundred golden dragon. Even if it's divided equally, it's not a small number. It's enough for you to spend the rest of your lives. The other side looked like he wanted to say something but stopped, his eyes staring at the leather bags on the table, seemingly thinking about how to get a greater benefit from them. In his heart, Theo was very clear about what these rats were thinking. The potion itself didn't have any cost. Even if it was given away for free it wouldn't be a problem, but with such a large amount of it, relying on him alone would be inefficient, and it would also be too eye-catching. Handing it over to the rats to sell would reduce the risk, and 10 silver royals was also a price that most of the citizens could afford. Of course, it was impossible for these people to honestly sell it at a low price, whether it was secretly selling a part of it to the inner city, or reselling it to the black market, they would be able to get a huge profit. In the end, these potions would be sold at a low price to the civilians. Perhaps less than half of them would be sold, but this wasn't the main point of Theo's concern. The task that His Highness Roland had given him was to thwart the Church's conspiracy as much as possible, as long as everyone understood that the holy elixir wasn't the only antidote to the demonic plague, and at the same time it wasn't a rare or expensive thing. the content of the priest's propaganda would be questioned by the people, especially those believers who had paid a huge price to get the holy elixir. They would start to doubt whether God's spokesperson was deceiving them or not. I know what you're thinking. Theo opened his mouth. You want to hide some of it and sell it secretly, or sell it to a higher bidder first. I can pretend that I didn't see it, but don't forget, his tone turned cold. My employer is not a kind person. If you don't want to sink to the bottom of the moat, it would be best for you to restrain yourself. After all, you have to live to have the opportunity to enjoy it. But what if someone else takes it and resells it? Silver Ring asked. It's very simple. Each person can only buy one bag, and they have to use it on the spot. After he finished speaking, he looked at the Black Hammer. How about it? Are you interested in taking this business? Relying solely on the underground trumpeter may not be able to eat so many potions, I think. Theo directly interrupted him. The specific arrangements for who to sell it to and where to sell it, that's your business. I'll just keep an eye on you for His Excellency. The Black Hammer gritted his teeth, looked around at the four people, and seeing that no one raised any objections, he then pounded the table with his fist. This business, I'll do it. Very well, he nodded. When the sun sets the day after tomorrow, the carriage carrying the potions will arrive at the entrance of the tavern. You arrange the people, and at the same time, spread the news about the new medicine. Do a good job. My employer doesn't want to see you fail. The day after tomorrow will also be the last day of the First Army's stay. After that, no matter what happens in the city, it will no longer pose a threat to His Highness, Theo thought. Not long after he left the tavern, Hill caught up with him from behind. Don't you want to see my companions? They are all eager to take revenge on Timothy. For the time being, I believe you because you passed the test, but that doesn't mean that I also believe them. Theo shook his head. If you hadn't been caught today, what would you have done? I wanted to go back and tell the news to everyone, and listen to their opinions, whether they should continue to observe for a while, or directly join His Highness Roland's side, he replied. Oh? Theo asked with great interest, what's your personal opinion? Hill hesitated for a moment, then said, I think that His Highness is different from the majority of the nobles. There are very few people like him who will try their best to save the fugitives, and he also treats the witches equally. If Timothy was also like this, my wife wouldn't. He was silent for a moment. Therefore, I am more inclined to directly serve His Highness. Then you go back now and don't say anything, just pretend that you never went to the pier. Why? He raised his head in surprise. Chapter 228. In the grand hall of the church, Priest Fairy was looking down at a farmer who was kneeling at his feet. The farmer's originally tall and sturdy body was now bent into a ball, his hands were trembling slightly, and his skin was showing an abnormal bluish-purple color. In less than half a day, these patches of color would condense into black spots, and eventually spread to the whole body. Until today, he was infected, which was already considered strong enough. I know you live in the Eastern District, Rocky Mountain, and often bring some fresh wheat to the church. The priest said, Ooh, remember me? That's great, Sir Priest, he repeatedly kowtowed. My whole family has been infected with the demonic disease. I need the holy elixir, I beg you. But what did you bring to the church this time? The holy elixir is not something that can be given at will, Fairy said slowly. It requires you to exchange it with a devout heart. In order to buy the elixir, my money was cheated by the rats, Rocky Mountain said in a trembling voice. Please forgive me for not being sincere. I should not have sought shortcuts in the black market. Now, I only have one last egg left. Please accept it. He took out a round egg from his bosom and held it above his head with both hands. Pinning your hopes on the deceitful and unfair black market, you will naturally be punished, but God will always lend a helping hand to the lost sheep. Only those who are aware of their mistakes will be able to go further and further on the pilgrimage. Fairy took the egg and said with a smile, Get up, God has forgiven you. Really? Rocky Mountain couldn't believe it. The messengers of God never lie. Fairy waved his hand, and another believer immediately came forward with a box of elixirs. He picked out 4 bottles from the box and handed them over to the believer. If I remember correctly, your family has a total of 4 people, right? Yes, sir, He swallowed his saliva, held the holy elixir in his hands, and bent down to kiss the priest's shoes. Thank you, thank you. I will dedicate my whole life to the church, to the true God. The surrounding believers were also moved by this scene and cheered, feeling happy for the addition of a new devout to the church family. When the cheers subsided, Fairy motioned for everyone to be quiet, and then said in a clear voice, "Next." The ritual lasted until dusk. Along with the sound of the bell in King City, Priest Fairy announced the end of today's ceremony and that it would continue tomorrow morning. Then he left the hall amidst the pleading and pleading of the crowd. Although his body was a little tired, he was still full of energy. He stood in the main hall and listened to the pleas and prayers of the people. Seeing how they couldn't wait to please him, he couldn't help but feel like he was a god. No, the church itself is like a god, Fairy thought. After prescribing the demonic plague and the medicine, it can easily control the life and death of others. This kind of power is no different from that of a true god. He could not help but lament that the best choice he had made in his life was to give up the family business and devote himself to the church. In the face of such power, no one could stop it. A wealthy businessman? A noble with high status and power? In the face of death, they were willing to give up everything in exchange for a chance to live. When he returned to the resting area of the rear hall, a priest hurriedly came forward and whispered in his ear, "My lord, a rat reported a situation." What? The refugees from the eastern region. He will only tell you the specific information after he sees you. The priest replied. In accordance with the church's previous instructions, Fairy should make full use of the demonic plague and the antidote to convert as many believers as possible for Hermes. Therefore, winning over the refugees was also a part of his plan, but compared to the people of King's City, their importance was not as high. He had planned to wait for 2 or 3 days until half of these homeless wanderers had died from the disease before leaving the city to treat them, while at the same time letting them fill the gap in King's City. In this way, in such a large King's City, 90% of the population would become believers of the church. Such a merit, coupled with the previous order to fight for the throne, would probably be enough for him to go one step further and set foot on the position of bishop. At least in terms of rewards, the church was very fair, never considering the bloodline or identity of the meritorious person. As long as they performed well, they would be promoted. Is it possible that there is something wrong with the refugees? He suppressed the doubts in his heart and said calmly, "You take him to the secret room, I will be there soon." "Yes, my lord." Fairy took off his priest robe, took out a soft armor from the wardrobe and put it on, and then covered himself with a loose coat. After tidying himself up in front of the silver mirror, he walked towards the secret room. Inside the small room in the basement, the priest saw the informant, with messy hair, sallow complexion, and skinny arms where the shape of the bones could be seen at a glance. But strangely, he didn't see any symptoms of black spots on his body. "My lord, my name is Needle Eye." The other person immediately knelt down when he saw the priest. "I have important information to tell you." "Speak." "But..." He looked up and looked at the other 2 people in the secret room, wanting to say something but hesitating. "It doesn't matter, this is Priest Shotraff, my right-hand man," Fairy said. "The other one is Granny Brown Teeth. She is responsible for taking care of this secret room and almost never leaves it." "Then I will speak, but you have promised." "Here is the potion." He impatiently took out the blue vial and shook it. "As long as your information is valuable, I will naturally cure you of the demonic plague." "My lord, I assure you that this information is absolutely amazing." Needle Eye raised his head and said, "There is a steady flow of refugees. The canal is full of empty boats. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. I am afraid that in a few days, they will be able to take away all the refugees." "Take away those patients with black spots?" Fairy frowned. "Are you sure?" He had previously received news that there was a fleet of ships taking in refugees from the eastern region, but this was actually a normal situation. Nobles from all over the world liked to take advantage of natural disasters in other families' territories to plunder a batch of labor at a very low cost. Anyway, when the demonic plague came, those idiots would naturally be punished by God. But now, how could there be people who knew that the demonic plague was rampant and still take in refugees? No, they have a way to cure the demonic plague. After the mercenaries gave the patients a strange bag of water to drink, the black spots quickly disappeared. Some people also claimed that they came from the Western Territory, and as long as the refugees follow the fleet, they will receive food, shelter, and remuneration. Needle Eye paused. The most incredible thing is that there is a witch among this group of people. What did you say? It's absolutely true, my lord. He shouted. I mixed in with the group of refugees and boarded the ship. At first I didn't notice it, but when someone jumped off the ship and fled, the mercenaries on the shore soon caught up with them. Only then did I notice that the shadow hovering in the sky was not a bird, but a flying witch. I was so scared that I didn't dare to move until the ship had sailed a few miles away. When I could no longer see any trace of the witch, I finally found an opportunity to jump into the water and escape. It took me almost a day to come back. Needle Eye rubbed his hands. My lord, do you think this information is worth exchanging for a bottle of holy elixir? Wait, you said that they have a way to cure the demonic plague, and you also drank the potion, that is to say, you are currently not sick. Fairy asked. That's right, but didn't you say that as long as I have some valuable information I can get it? Needle Eye awkwardly grinned, revealing a mouthful of uneven yellow teeth. So that's how it is, he wanted to take this bottle of holy elixir, which he could no longer use, and sell it on the black market. Fairy pondered for a moment. How many people do they have? Are you sure they are mercenaries from the caravan? Indeed, they don't have armor, they don't have horses, their weapons are wooden spears. The number of people. Needle Eye scratched his head. At most, there are no more than 100 people. What about the ship? Which family are they from? I don't know, most of the ships don't have flags. Even if they did, I wouldn't be able to recognize them. Anyway, the mercenary himself said that the fleet will sail to the Western Territory. Ah? Yes. He also mentioned that this is the recruitment of the Lord of Border Town. He racked his brain to recall. It seems that in order to reclaim the land, the Lord needs to accommodate a lot of manpower. I can only remember this much. Well, it is indeed a very important piece of information. After listening to Needle Eye, the priest took a deep breath, took out the bottle of blue potion from his bosom, and threw it towards Needle Eye. Take it, it's yours. Thank you, my lord. The latter scrambled to catch the bottle, but suddenly his whole body trembled, and his eyes widened, only to see a slender dagger piercing through his neck, the tip of the dagger emitting a faint cold light, and standing behind him was the aged manager of the chamber. Chapter 229. The old woman took back her dagger and placed the needle on the ground. She picked up the bottle and rubbed it on her body before handing it back to the priest. Good job, Fairy nodded. Drag him out and dispose of him. Yes, she replied in a hoarse voice, dragging the body without the slightest effort, completely unlike a dying old woman. My lord, do you believe what he said? After the manager left, Priest Shotrath asked, the caravan and the witches are mixed together, and it is also under the orders of the Lord of Border Town. If I remember correctly, isn't the Lord the fourth Prince Roland Wimbledon? Whether it is true or not, we will have to send someone to check it out, Fairy said with a serious face, but I think it is unlikely that he is lying. As long as you look at the wall, you will be able to notice the movement of the fugitives. If he wanted to fabricate a lie in exchange for the holy elixir, he would at least have to fabricate something that is difficult to verify. I will immediately send someone to check it, the priest said while bowing. Go, if you find any news, immediately report it to me. Fairy slowly walked to the table and sat down, playing with the holy elixir in his hand. These refugees were already in his pocket. In order to control their movements and prevent them from escaping after the spread of the demonic plague, he instructed the Dreamland Water to send rats to mix with the refugees and spread the news that the church was about to come to their rescue. As long as they endured for a few more days, not only could they obtain God's redemption, they might even be accepted by the church and become a part of Grey Castle. As for the hidden rats, most of them were infected with the demonic plague. In order to exchange for the holy elixir, they would certainly spare no effort to work for him. If the rats' information was correct, this group of people had been transporting the fugitives since at least yesterday, and according to their posture, it seemed that they would not stop until all of them had been transported away. which was equivalent to seriously hindering his plan. What was more serious was that they were in cahoots with the witches. Fairy believed that the one who could cure the demonic plague must be a witch. "My lord, the bodies have been disposed of." The old woman quietly walked into the secret room. "Has another fallen person appeared?" 9 out of 10, Fairy said in a low voice, "and there may be more than one." He paused. "There are no outsiders here, so there is no need to disguise yourself in such an ugly appearance. It is annoying to look at." "Yes." She bent down, and then there was a crackling sound from her body, as if all the bones in her body were rubbing against each other. Her figure grew rapidly, and her white hair turned black in the blink of an eye. Her wrinkled and saggy skin gradually tightened, becoming tight and elastic again. Time seemed to flow in reverse, and when she stretched her body again, she had become a beautiful woman. "This looks much better," Fairy smiled with satisfaction. "I remember that this man is the one who was hanged at the city gate?" "Yes, my lord," she nodded. "Of the 4 of us, you spent the most time on her. You really know how to please me." The priest smacked his lips. "But Shotrath will probably be back soon. There isn't much time." He suppressed the emotions in his heart. "And those fallen ones still need you to deal with them, just like in the past." "Leave it to me, my lord." The other side bowed and said, "I will not let any of the fallen witches go." About a quarter of an hour later, Shotrath returned to the secret room. He first looked at the witch and then reported to Fairy, "My lord, the camp of the fugitives outside the West City Gate is indeed missing a lot of people. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to see clearly in the dark, so I let my men carry torches to go down and look around. Many of the tents are empty. However, there is no light in the dock area, so it is not clear whether the caravan is still stationed there or not. As for the witches, there is no need to check," Fairy interrupted. "Since the other side dared to transport the sick fugitives, the information from the rats should not be wrong. In this way, this group has at least 2 witches, one to monitor the situation from the air, and the other to eliminate the demonic plague. Especially the latter, they are a huge threat to my plan, so they must be stopped." Now the other side was still outside the city. In case they brought the witches into the city and openly treated the infected citizens, then the holy elixir that he had promoted would become a joke. "So what should we do?" The priest asked. "Send the army of judges to capture the witches?" He shook his head. "This is King's City, not the holy city of Hermes. The church only has more than 20 army of judges. If we send them out, who will maintain the order when the medicine is distributed tomorrow? Moreover, if the number is too small, in addition to alerting the enemy, they won't be able to play any role. Even if we can defeat the mercenaries, I'm afraid the witches will have already escaped." Because it was King's City, the army of judges responsible for guarding the church was only maintained on the scale of a few dozen people. Otherwise, the king would not be able to sleep if there was a garrison of several hundred people. Then, should we write a letter to the holy city and ask the bishop to send reinforcements? By the time the army of judges arrives, I'm afraid the fugitives will have already left. Priest Fairy sneered. "Moreover, to deal with a group of mercenaries, we don't need the church's elite to come out. Let's leave this matter to Dreamland Water." "Leave it to the rats?" Shotrath was startled. "At least they have a large number of people, so they can surround the pier in advance and then swarm in. How many rats do you think a mercenary without armor and with a wooden spear can deal with?" he asked. "Probably 2 or 3 people. Therefore, they can only deal with 200 people at most, while Dreamland Water can gather more than 1,000 thugs. Of course, these brave and ruthless dregs may not be able to match the formation of a team of judges, but they are more than enough to crush a group of mercenaries without armor." Fairy stood up. "Take my words to Fierce Teeth Tanis. Give him 1 day to gather people, the more the better, and tomorrow night we will start. Don't reveal that there is another way to cure the demonic plague, and don't say that it is to deal with the witches. Just tell him not to let a single person escape. The reward is a whole box of holy elixir. If he wants to evade or prevaricate, tell him that in the future he can forget about the poppies and sleeping ferns from me." "But the witches, what should we do? Especially the one who can fly in the air?" She won't be able to fly forever, and the rats won't be able to end the battle in a short time, or their role is more to attract the attention of the other party. Fairy walked to the witch's side, reaching out to stroke her face. As long as the faceless one finds an opportunity to sneak into the camp, the result will be no suspense. Through touch, she could completely disguise herself or others as another person. Moreover, not only her appearance but even her figure and voice could be perfectly replaced. Moreover, even the god's stone of retaliation couldn't remove it. This kind of ability was simply impeccable for an assassin. It was precisely because of this that she became one of the few witches that the church had specially trained. Chapter 230. On the third day, outside the east gate of King's City, Nightingale was hidden in the mist, quietly watching the group of ragged refugees. Under Echo's sound transmission spell, they were summoned in waves, following the Night Brian as they slowly moved towards the pier. Now they didn't have to walk around the edge of the refugee camp like they did 2 days ago, separating the crowd bit by bit. The large number of refugees had also attracted the attention of the rest of the people. As long as a group of people were pulled away from the edge, there would be a continuous stream of people following them. Even the guards on the city wall noticed what was happening at the foot of the wall, but for them, they couldn't wait for the refugees who emitted a foul smell to leave as soon as possible. The whole plan was progressing very smoothly. There weren't many refugees left in the East City area, and the people of the North Gate were taking the initiative to come here. Probably before sunset, everyone would be able to smoothly leave by boat. While everyone was busy, only she seemed relatively leisurely. Echo was surrounded by layers of mercenaries who were responsible for guiding them, and Lily was under the heavy protection of the First Army, making purifying water. Her own guard work seemed a bit redundant. Only when the mercenaries dispersed to carry the seriously ill patients who couldn't move did she need to be vigilant. At this moment, Nightingale saw Echo looking up at the magnificent East Gate and sighing softly. "What's wrong?" She walked up and asked. "Nothing, I'm just a little sad." Echo's expression was a little sad. "Before I was sold to King's City, I suffered a lot along the way. I originally thought that the people of Grey Castle were so cruel to me because of my identity as a Sand Nation, but now it seems that they are also ruthless to their own people, not much different from the people of Iron Sand City." Thinking that Echo had been bought and sold as a slave, Nightingale didn't know how to comfort her. In the end, she could only pat her shoulder. But not everyone is like this. There are many people with good intentions, such as the Sisters of the Witch Cooperation Association, such as His Highness Roland. "Do you think His Highness can really stop disputes?" Echo said in a low voice. "Whether it's the Six Kingdoms, the Sand Nation, the Fjords, or ordinary people and witches, can they all live together freely and peacefully without fighting each other?" "If it's His Highness, I think he can do it," Nightingale replied in an affirmative tone. "It's not those strange machines and powerful cannons that make me feel this way, but he himself. I always feel that His Highness is not the same kind of person as us. Of course he's different from us. He's the Prince of Grey Castle." "No, it has nothing to do with identity." She shook her head. "I don't know where this feeling of difference comes from. It's just intuition. Probably only a person like His Highness could come up with so many strange theories. Even the witch's abilities, he wanted to study them over and over again, so his way of thinking was different from others. In any case, no matter what amazing things he creates, I won't be surprised." "You really have confidence in him," Queen burst out laughing. The sadness on her face immediately diluted a lot. "I hope that when that day comes, I can also return to the southernmost region to take a look." Confidence? In a way, yes, but in another way, she was completely unsure. Nightingale couldn't help but look towards the Western Territory. She didn't know what he was doing when she wasn't there. Was he busy with those drawings and strange machines, or was he with Anna? She shook her head hard, dispelling these distracting thoughts. "Anyway, after today, we can set off to return to Border Town." Nightingale thought, "When the time comes, I can directly ask him. Anyway, he can't lie in front of me." At noon, when they returned to the camp to rest, lightning also slowly descended. These days, she had been patrolling in the sky under the hot sun, and was really the hardest one in the team. In particular, in order to hide her figure, Lightning had to put on a special sky camouflage coat made by Soroya. Not only was her body tightly wrapped, but even her head was covered. This coat, which had been given a strange name by His Royal Highness Roland, was obviously not designed for beauty. It was painted with a layer of light blue and gray patterns, and when flying in the air, it was almost integrated with the background. If one didn't look carefully, it would be difficult to find her existence. After landing, the first thing the little girl did was to take off her coat, grab a water bag, and fill her stomach with water. Nightingale saw that her clothes were soaked in sweat, her forehead and the tip of her nose were covered with beads of sweat, and her white cheeks were left with a circle of marks from the pressure of her windproof glasses. "You've worked hard." Nightingale squatted down and helped her wipe the sweat. Fortunately, these people didn't come from the Eastern Territory endlessly. Lightning stuck out her tongue. "Otherwise, I would have really fainted from the sun." "Will you be able to go home tomorrow?" Lily listlessly walked to Lightning's side. "I haven't taken a shower for several days, and my whole body feels uncomfortable." Nightingale couldn't help but laugh out loud. In the Witch Cooperation Association, no one had had time to take a shower for more than half a month, and no one had complained about it, but now it had only been a week. She suddenly thought that the bathroom and the soap might be all part of His Royal Highness Roland's conspiracy. Since he knew about those strange and useful things, it would be very difficult for the witches to make up their minds to leave Border Town. However, the tranquility didn't last until the end of the shipment. After lunch, Theo, who had gone to King's City to inquire about information, came back with bad news. "You mean Dreamland Water is gathering its subordinates and is planning to surround the pier?" Iron Axe frowned. "Yes, perhaps they are planning to surround the pier." Theo corrected him. "The first part is a confirmed fact, but the latter part is too bizarre, so my informant isn't sure. Now the other Blackstreet organizations in King City have taken action, in case Dreamland Waters suddenly attacked their own territory. However, compared to the other side deliberately releasing a smokescreen to surround the pier, I believe that they themselves leaked the information, which is very common for rats. After all, most of the members of the Blackstreet organization are gangsters or dregs. They simply can't be considered a strict organization. If the information is correct, then Dreamland Water should be under the instigation of some force, otherwise it would be very difficult for them to leave their territory." "A group of rats," Iron Axe said indifferently, "but will these people running around affect your plan to sell the medicine?" "It shouldn't be," Theo said. "They can't interfere with the patrol, so it's unlikely that they will obstruct me from going in and out of the side door. As for after entering the city, the skeleton fingers will provide protection for the convoy carrying the medicine. I'm just worried about you, because tonight I have to stay in the city to supervise the sale of the purified water, so I'm afraid I won't be able to see you off tomorrow morning." "It doesn't matter," Iron Axe patted his arm. "When His Royal Highness comes to King's City, we will see each other again." Just as Nightingale expected, at dusk, the last batch of sailboats carrying refugees slowly left the pier, heading towards Silver City. The remaining more than 300 people who didn't want to leave King City were ordered to disperse by Iron Axe. Chapter 231. Before the sun had completely set, Faceless had already quietly crossed the canal, outflanking the mercenary camp. Her real name was not Faceless, but Aphrodite. This was the name given to her by Bishop Heather in the holy city of Hermes, meaning dust. She liked this name very much, because dust was simple and unadorned. As long as it fell to the ground, it would no longer be distinguishable from each other, just like herself. Only in front of Heather, Aphrodite would restore her original appearance. As a member of the arbitration tribunal, she assisted the bishop in dealing with many fallen people, including witches who had rebelled against the church, and believers who had been corrupted by the secular world. She was sent to King City to complete a key task, to transform a devout presiding judge into the king of Grey Castle. As for capturing fallen witches, it was just a side activity. She liked to imitate those witches who had been punished and tortured, and then experience it from the beginning to the end. Sharing the pain of the fallen people made her feel more deeply the meaning of everything she had done, and it was also the atonement for her devil's power. The other side's camp was very cleverly set up, located in the raised fields on the shore, making it difficult to observe their whereabouts from a low place, and the witches flying in the sky made her not dare to get too close. Aphrodite had to lurk in a farm warehouse, waiting until it was dark to act. When the night shrouded the earth, she unexpectedly found that the situation had changed. The mercenaries had withdrawn from the pier area, all retreating back to the camp, but those Dreamland water idiots, unexpectedly sparsely holding torches, gathered together on the riverbank. This kind of formation was simply telling the other side that someone was coming to attack the camp. Even if there were no flying witches, as long as the mercenary group was not completely blind, they could easily see that something was wrong. Oh no, her heart was not good. If the other side judged that the rats outnumbered them, and that they had no chance of winning, they would definitely retreat to the east. Although marching at night was very taboo, when it came to escaping, they obviously couldn't care so much. But at the moment there was not even a shadow of the encirclement. Dreamland water had just occupied the pier, and were still relying on the few rafts on the shore to slowly cross the river. By the time they surrounded them, the other side would have already run away. It was impossible to let the rats chase the enemy at night, so where would she go to find those damn witches? Aphrodite hurried in the direction of the camp, hoping to blend into the group before they retreated. But when she arrived near the mercenary gathering place, the scene in front of her was completely unexpected. There were still people patrolling the perimeter of the camp. The bonfire was burning brightly, and the shadows of people came and went. It seemed to be orderly and there was no chaos. They didn't choose to retreat? After carefully observing for a while, Aphrodite confirmed her judgment and was secretly delighted. Although he did not know why the other party decided to stay here instead of running away, the outcome was already set in stone. She took out a dagger from her waist, observed the movements of the sentries, and moved towards the weakest spot. In addition to giving her the meaning of survival, Lady Heather also taught her fighting and assassination skills. Their opponents were not elite mercenaries who had been through hundreds of battles. This could be seen from the arrangement of the sentries. Taking advantage of a mercenary looking elsewhere, she quickly threw herself behind him, covering his mouth with one hand and stabbing the dagger into his neck with the other. After quietly killing the mercenary, Aphrodite pressed the other side with one hand and put her other hand on her chest, casting her transformation ability. This was a long or short process. When she replaced the king, in order to ensure that it would last for a long time, she had almost exhausted all the magic in her body, and the transformation time had lasted for nearly half an hour. But this time she didn't need to expend so much effort, and in the blink of an eye she had turned herself into a mercenary. Although the effect could only last for half a day, it was enough for an assassination. Before the patrol could come back, she quickly stripped off the other side's clothes and put them on her body, while dragging the corpse into the wheat field. But when faced with the mercenary's weapon, she felt a little confused. It was an iron spear with a wooden handle, but the shaft didn't have a spear point. Instead there was a small black hole. What kind of weapon was this? She thought for a long time but still couldn't come up with an answer. Seeing that the patrol was about to pass by, Aphrodite had no choice but to first follow her memory and carry it on her back, pretending to be a serious lookout. Just like the countless previous assassinations, the patrol team brushed past her and did not notice anything strange. Aphrodite was also not anxious to return to the camp to find the whereabouts of the witches. After all, the substitution spell could only simulate the appearance, but couldn't read the mind. In case she met an acquaintance, it would be very easy to give herself away. Wait until these people were in chaos, then there would be countless opportunities for her to choose. When the moon hung high in the night sky, the idiots of Dreamland finally crossed the canal, approaching her side. And behind her also sounded a whistle. The patrolling and sentinel mercenaries began to withdraw to the camp. Her chance had come. Following the crowd into the camp, Aphrodite was surprised to find that the other side was far more than 100 people. They had formed a long circle, surrounding the top of the small hill. Some were crouching, some were standing, their hands holding that strange weapon, the end with the hole pointed at the enemy. She didn't have time to take a closer look, Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, she bent down and entered the nearest tent. Not long after, outside came the sound of battle cries, which were then interrupted by a more violent explosion. Aphrodite was startled. The sound was so dense, almost without the slightest pause. In the end, what happened? She resisted the urge to poke her head out to see what was going on, calmly waiting. As time passed, the camp became busy. Everywhere was the sound of footsteps and orders, probably adjusting the defensive strength according to the number of enemies attacking. What made Aphrodite anxious was, why after so long, they still hadn't attacked the top of the hill? After a while, the sound of banging gradually became sparse, and she could no longer hear the sound of the rats fighting. This made Aphrodite's heart sink. Could it be that the dregs of Dreamland had already been defeated? Even if the number of mercenaries doubled, it would still only be 200 or 300 people, and the more than 1,000 rats surrounding from all directions were actually unable to take a step onto the top of the hill? The opportunity seemed to be getting away from her. Aphrodite immediately drilled out of the tent, moving towards the center of the camp, waiting for the battle to end. When the people were counted, it would be very difficult for her to hide from everyone's eyes. This wasn't a well-prepared infiltration. She was completely unfamiliar with the mercenary group's personnel and password, so she had to finish the battle quickly. Bypassing 2 tents, Aphrodite slowly poked her head out, looking towards the center of the camp. She saw 4 women sitting around the campfire, probably the witches mentioned in the intelligence report. Although the numbers didn't match up, but from the beginning this damned intelligence report was never accurate, and killing 2 or killing 4 didn't make much difference. Any suspected fallen people should be interrogated. If there wasn't enough time to interrogate, then they should all be killed. Even if they were wrong, it was still a necessary sacrifice. She looked left and right, planning her retreat route, stood up from behind the tent, pretending as if nothing had happened, and walked towards the campfire. Just as she stepped into the center of the open space, Aphrodite felt a cold, hard object pressing against the back of her head. Chapter 232. Faceless felt a chill all over her body. How is this possible? She swallowed her saliva and said in a low voice, "Are you kidding me? I am Volt. It can't be such a coincidence that the other party just happened to know me. There are so many mercenaries in the camp, how could she remember everyone's name?" She did not expect a sneer to come from behind her. "Really? I never knew that a man could also gather magic in his body. Either you are a witch who sneaked into the camp with ulterior motives, or you are an extremely rare wizard. But no matter which answer, it can't be the Volt you mentioned. There is no one like you among the soldiers of the First Army. This person can see the demonic power?" Aphrodite's heart had already sunk to the bottom. She now knew why she had been discovered. There were more than 4 witches in the camp, and the woman behind her was also a witch. Moreover, she had an ability similar to the Eye of Truth. In the Church's Holy Book of Magic, such an ability was recorded. It was one of the hundreds of derivative abilities, and did not conflict with the main ability. She did not see anyone approaching. Then, the other party's main ability was to hide her body? "Now kneel, hands behind your back, and I can still spare your life," she shouted. "Do as I say." The mercenaries were still fighting on the periphery, and did not notice the scene in the center of the open space, but the 4 witches by the campfire had already noticed the abnormal situation here, and one after another cast their eyes over. "What happened, Nightingale? What happened?" This was her last chance. Aphrodite realized that she was good at assassination rather than direct combat, especially in a situation where she did not wear the god's stone of retaliation. When dealing with witches with all kinds of strange abilities, she would not have the upper hand. It did not matter if the witch who could fly ran away, but the witch who could cure the demonic plague must die here, otherwise she would pose a serious threat to the Church's plan. Of course, there was also the possibility that after killing the other party, she would also not be able to escape. Thinking of this, her heart could not help but tighten, but it quickly turned into calmness. In order to unify the 4 countries, the Church did their best to resist the demons from hell, and had already sacrificed many excellent soldiers. If she could make up for this goal, it would also be something to be proud of. She believed Heather would not forget her, and in the future, her name would also be in the Holy Book. "Don't come any closer," the witch called Nightingale shouted from behind. "There's—" At this moment she suddenly turned around and elbowed him in the arm. At the same time, she lowered her head to avoid being stabbed by the weapon. It was impossible for anyone to completely concentrate when they were talking. Therefore, there was a saying that people should hold their breath and concentrate. This was what the instructor had repeatedly taught her. On the contrary, if she wanted to escape or attack while the opponent was unprepared, it was best to take advantage of the moment when the opponent was talking. The mechanism hidden in his sleeve was also triggered at the first moment, and a white powder sprayed behind him. This kind of alchemy powder could release a large amount of heat when it came in contact with water, and if it entered the eyes or mouth, it could instantly make the opponent lose the ability to fight. Even if she was lucky enough not to inhale the powder, it was enough to make her flustered for a while. Next, Aphrodite pounced at the 4 witches by the bonfire. One of the golden-haired witches flew up in a flash, while the one who looked to be the oldest stood in front of the other 2 without any regard for her own safety. She pulled out a sharp dagger and stabbed it at the person in the lead. Anyway, the 3 people who couldn't escape would all die in her hands, so there was no need to distinguish who would die first. At the moment when the dagger pierced the opponent's body, Aphrodite saw an incredible scene. A white shadow appeared in front of her. Under the hood, the eyes flashed with an angry light, and there was clearly nothing there before. Was Nightingale behind her? That kind of powder spray at close range, why didn't it affect her at all? Faceless could hardly believe her eyes, only to see her raise her hands toward herself, and the silver weapon burst into a flame. Her body was pushed by something hard, and she suddenly lost her balance, falling backward to the ground. No, there are still 2 people to deal with. Aphrodite wanted to stand up and pull out her dagger to stab the next witch, but she found that even raising her hand became very difficult, and her consciousness quickly blurred. Unfortunately, her mind flashed the last thought. After shooting, Nightingale was still in the same place, watching the soldier who was hit in the chest fall down. Her body began to twist and shrink, slowly changing back into the appearance of a strange woman. This was the first time she personally killed a witch. It wasn't until Lily's anxious shout sounded that Nightingale came back to her senses. Suppressing the tumbling emotions in her heart, she put away the gun and ran back to Vendi's side. "Where are you hurt?" "It's nothing, I don't feel any pain." Vendi waved her hand, motioning everyone not to panic. "I shouldn't have been stabbed." "Did the protective suit work?" "I think it should be." She unbuttoned her chest and saw a slender dagger hanging on the side of her clothes. As the jacket opened, the dagger slipped out of the hole and fell to the ground. There was no blood on the tip of the dagger. Only the outer layer of the protective suit had a small hole, while the soft inner layer was still intact. You really scared me to death." Lily let out a long sigh, and her legs softened as she sat on the ground. "Don't rush to help me block the sword. I don't need you to do this kind of thing for me. Well," Vendi touched her head, "I'm fine, aren't I?" Lily shrugged her head, buried her head in the former's chest, and let out a muffled sound. "I was also scared. I only cared about blocking in front of her, and forgot to use my ability." Vendi shook her head. "If there was a strong wind, she shouldn't have been able to stab me. Because you rarely fight with people, it's normal for you to not be able to react," Nightingale comforted her. "Fortunately, I had the protective suit," Echo said with a look of fear. "Otherwise this time we would have been in danger." Before leaving, His Royal Highness Roland gave each witch a special vest, and asked them to never take it off at any time. It was very light to wear, but it looked a bit thick, and it seemed to be divided into many layers. His Royal Highness said that each layer of silk was painted with Soraya's sky coating, which made it extremely flexible, making it very difficult to be pierced by sharp objects, and had an excellent defense against swords and crossbows. If it hadn't helped to block the stab, Vendi might not have been able to survive until Nana's treatment. Lightning slowly descended to the side of the dead witch. "Why did she attack us? Are we do the same kind?" Nightingale stared at the lifeless woman for a long time, unable to speak. The other's eyes were closed, and her long blue hair was scattered on the ground. Her expression was serene, and it seemed that she didn't feel too much pain. But she could never forget that when she flew towards Vendi, There wasn't a trace of hesitation in her eyes, only determination, and as if it was a matter of course. It was as if she wasn't killing people, but was instead practicing her lifelong ideals. Perhaps in her heart, this was the right thing to do. Chapter 233. There are countless islands in the fjords, and no one has ever been to the border of these islands, said a tall man with a rough and bold face. The further east you go, the more unpredictable the climate becomes, and the same is true for the islands. I really don't know how strange they will be in the end. Even you haven't been there? Tilly asked curiously. They say that you are the most outstanding explorer in the fjords, and besides you, there are almost no one who dares to cross the burning island and continue eastward. Ha ha, he laughed heartily. This is just an exaggerated praise. In fact, every year there are brave fjords people who explore the east, but it is very difficult to find anything new. The violent hurricanes and the sudden appearance of the fog will make it difficult for the ships to move. He is Thunder, thought Ashes, the first explorer to discover the Shadow Islands, but since 2 years ago he had been lost in a shipwreck, many people thought that he had met with misfortune. Unexpectedly, he appeared on Sleeping Island, and also reached an agreement with the 5th princess. He would open up new routes for Sleeping Island, draw up sea maps, and look for more new ruins, while Tilly would send witches to assist him in his exploration. As for the 2 years he had been missing, she had never heard him mention it, and Tilly had also kept her mouth shut about it, but she always felt that His Highness knew the inside story, otherwise the two would not have such a tacit understanding. This caused Ashes to feel slightly unhappy in her heart. Like yesterday's hurricane? Yes, it came in the blink of an eye and disappeared in a flash. Thunder shook his pipe, sprinkled the ashes into the sea, then filled it with grass and lit it. If it wasn't for that magical witch, her name is Molly, Ashes reminded him stiffly. Ah, yes, look at my memory. Thunder didn't care at all, touched the back of his head and laughed. If it wasn't for Molly, I'm afraid the ship would have been turned upside down. Her ability is simply amazing. I often think that maybe witches are the most suitable explorers. You already have one, don't you? Tilly smiled. The witch who inherited the title of the most outstanding explorer. Thunder took a deep drag on his pipe and exhaled a long stream of smoke. I hope so. Ashes frowned. She couldn't understand what the two of them were talking about. She left the bow and walked to the stern to calm herself down. Her Royal Highness the 5th Princess seemed to be very eager to explore the ruins. After cleaning the fjord's church, she immediately prepared to go to the sea. What surprised her was that His Highness wanted to go in person, and no matter how she tried to dissuade him, it was useless. Molly was sitting at the stern of the ship. The magic servant controlling her was holding a fishing rod and learning how to fish from the sailors. Although the sailors were still somewhat resistant to witches when they first boarded the ship, but after yesterday's hurricane, everyone's attitude had undergone a tremendous change. Molly had summoned a magic servant to rapidly expand, wrapping the middle part of the ship inside its body. Regardless of whether it was a gale or a rainstorm, nothing was able to invade it. Although the ship bobbed up and down in the waves, the hull of the ship remained stable. Nowadays, every sailor regarded witches as the god of luck, and some even said that without a witch accompanying them, they wouldn't dare to go out to sea. Sister Ashes, look at the big fish I caught. Molly pointed to the bucket behind her. Inside it lay a scaleless fish with a sharp mouth. It was completely different from the river fish she had seen in Grey Castle. What is this? Swordfish, it likes to follow the ship. Sometimes its sharp mouth will break through the bottom of the ship, the sailor replied. But it tastes very delicious, especially the belly meat. When placed in the mouth, it is like melting ice. He smacked his lips. In the evening, everyone can enjoy the delicious boiled swordfish. I seem to have caught another fish, Molly exclaimed in surprise. She saw a shadow appear in the green water, and as the magic servant pulled the rod, it became bigger and bigger. Soon it would come to the surface. This is, the sailor was stunned. No, quickly throw away the fishing rod. Before his voice died away, a strange creature had already jumped out of the water, opened its big mouth and directly bit Molly. Seeing that it was about to swallow its target whole, Ash's speed was faster than it. She picked up the little girl with her left hand, and with her right hand, she swung the giant sword and directly hit the head of the attacker. The monster let out a painful cry and was smashed down from the air. Its 6 feet quickly moved, trying to escape back into the water, but Ashes didn't give it the chance. She put down Molly, held the sword with both hands, and plunged down, directly nailing the monster to the deck. It twitched for a moment, spitting out a string of white bubbles from its mouth, and soon stopped moving. What is this? At this moment, Ashes finally had the opportunity to carefully look at the monster in front of her. It somewhat looked like a fish, but it also had the short legs of a crab. When it opened its mouth, it was round, almost as big as its body, and was filled with densely packed teeth. The most disgusting thing was that on both sides of its mouth, there was a pair of hairy arms, the ends of which were divided into 5 fingers, looking like a human hand. A mutated sea ghost. The startled sailor patted his chest. They often disguise themselves as fish, bite fishermen, and drag them into the water. And I heard that only sea ghosts that have eaten humans will grow hands. The latter part is just a rumor, someone behind her said. Ashes turned around and found that Thunder and Tilly had come over. Mr. Captain. The sailor stuck out his tongue and immediately stepped aside. The more sensational the rumor, the more inaccurate it is. Thunder stepped forward and kicked the monster on the ground. In fact, it has a name that you may be more familiar with. What? Ashes asked. Demonic beast, he said word by word. Sir Thunder, the fog is rising. The lookout suddenly shouted. Everyone, keep your spirits up. Thunder ordered loudly, lower the sails, we are sailing into the Shadow Sea. Ashes noticed that the previously clear sky suddenly became gloomy, and the green sea turned dark green, as if there was a mass of ink spreading under the water. Soon, the hull was surrounded by a thick fog, and she couldn't even see the figure on the bow from the stern. What's going on? Tilly couldn't help but grab Ash's arm. It proves that we are not going in the wrong direction, Thunder smiled. When the Shadow Islands emerge from the sea, there will be a thick fog rising in the sea. Of course, the correct way to say it is that the sea is ebbing, and the range is about 10 feet. Such a huge drop will produce a lot of water vapor, plus there are reefs everywhere, so if we are not careful, we will hit the reef and sink. I need your witches to help prevent the ship from being wrecked. The group of people came to the bow, and just like when they were fighting against a storm, Molly let the magic servant wrap the bow and tried to expand its body. Part of its body sank into the water, so that even if there were reefs on the bow, the servant would be the first to feel it. If there are no witches, what are you going to do? Ashes asked. Then we can only rely on patience and luck, Thunder sighed. The fleet will send a small boat to explore the road ahead, and after confirming that the road is clear, the big boat will follow. But the sea in this area is not calm, just like the demonic beasts you saw before. The closer we get to the Shadow Islands, the more numerous they become. Fog reefs monsters. This is the reason why so many explorers go here, but only a few can find the entrance to the ruins. After sailing for about an hour, the fog gradually dissipated, and Ashes saw that there were more and more islands around them, but there were few plants on them, only green moss or algae, and there were also many crustaceans climbing on them. Are these islands submerged in the water? Chapter 234. The further east we sailed, the thinner the fog became, but the sky was still gloomy, as if the sun could not penetrate the sea. The surrounding reefs were also getting higher and gradually turned into thick stone pillars. For some reason, the water level was obviously dropping, but the ship was still very stable. Even the waves on the sea had reduced, and it was as calm as a windless lake. Why didn't you wait for the water to completely recede before entering the Shadow Sea? Tilly asked puzzledly. If all the reefs were exposed, you wouldn't have to be afraid of hitting the reef. Because when the water recedes, we won't be able to see the ghost Shadow Red River, and it's the only way to guide explorers to the ruins, Thunder explained. These pillar-like islands are not fixed. Every time the tide rises and falls, the position of the islands will change. In addition, most of the markers will be swallowed by the sea, so it can't be used to determine the direction. Ghost Shadow Red River? she repeated. Look, this is it. Thunder whistled and pointed to the bow. The witches looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a few red figures in the dark green sea. They flashed like phantoms. But soon 2 or 3 red figures floated by, and this time Ashes saw the target clearly. It was actually an orange-red fish. This is a fish? A red-scaled fish unique to the Shadow Islands. Thunder touched his chin and smiled. You'll see the true face of the ghost Shadow Red River in a moment. Gradually, there were more and more fish, and they no longer appeared in 2s and 3s, but instead gathered into a group and swam towards the stern of the ship. Looking far ahead, Ashes was shocked by the scene she saw. More and more fish converged into this torrent, and a thick dark red line had already appeared in the sea. The sailboat was obviously moving according to this red line. The fish passed through the bottom of the boat, and from time to time, she could hear the sound of collision. She suddenly realized that this was the ghost Shadow Red River, a strange river that didn't exist. As the ship continued to move forward, the dense shoals of fish had expanded into a channel that could accommodate several ships side by side. The dark green seawater seemed to have disappeared, and the ship seemed to be sailing on top of the shoals of fish. If it weren't for the fact that the two of them were moving in opposite directions, she would have had the illusion that the ship was being dragged by the fish. Why is it like this? Tilly asked in surprise. Ashes also wanted to ask this question. If she was in Grey Castle or any other kingdom, it would be impossible to see such a scene. The fog that shrouded the periphery, the gloomy sky, the grotesquely shaped boulders, and the river, formed by red-scaled fish. For the first time, she was awed by the wonder of the sea. Because of the main island, Thunder said, it's like a triangular spire, with a huge hole in the middle that runs through the body of the spire. These red-scaled fish like to lay eggs in the hole and reproduce. When the tide fell, the hole would surface, and the fish would always be the first to feel the change in the water level, and they would swarm out. Therefore, as long as we follow the ghost Shadow Red River, we will be able to reach the Shadow Main Island. Lord Thunder, there's a huge obstacle ahead. It looks like a huge mountain. The lookout shouted. It looks like we're almost there. He shook out his pipe. Ladies, welcome to the Shadow Islands. After a while, Ashes also saw the appearance of the main island. Just as Thunder had said, it looked like a few triangular pieces put together. It was wide at the bottom and narrow at the top. The surface looked very flat at first glance, and it didn't look like a natural creation at all. However, to say that the whole tower was cut out by a human would be too shocking. Just the exposed body of the tower was almost half the size of a city, and the hole in the middle was enough to accommodate the Babel Tower of Hermes Church. The sea was still receding, and the water at the top of the giant hole was like a waterfall, while the submerged part below was completely covered by the fish, dyeing the sea within the range of vision red. Ashes couldn't help but think that there were probably millions of red-scaled fish living in the hole. It was not until the sky turned dark that the sea completely receded to the bottom of the hole. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Thunder ordered the sailors to stop the boat and dock, and then used a thick hemp rope to connect to the copper stake at the entrance of the hole. Standing at the edge of the giant hole, they could see the hole on the opposite side. The light coming from both sides could only illuminate a very small area, and the center of the hole was almost completely dark, making people feel inexplicably depressed. These stakes were left behind when you came last time? Ashes asked. No, Thunder shook his head. When I came here for the first time, the copper stakes were already here. They should have been built by the owner of the ruins. The ruins? Where is it? He smiled and pointed upwards. It's right above us. We're already standing at the entrance of the ruins. The following journey could only be described as inconceivable. The witches followed Thunder and the others, entering through a stone door at the bottom of the giant hole, following the gurgling water on the stone steps, spiraling up step by step. Although everyone was holding torches, the flickering flames seemed weak and insignificant compared to the endless staircase. Moving forward in the abyss of darkness, Tilly tightly grasped Ashes's arm, completely losing her usual calm appearance. This is the Her Royal Highness that I know, Ashes thought. In the palace, Princess Tilly always had her own ideas and was confident in facing any difficulties, but her biggest weakness was that she was afraid of the dark. Even when she slept at night, she would always light candles in her room. When they escaped from the palace, if they didn't have the conditions to do so, Roland would always accompany her to sleep. Walking in the damp and dark steeple, Ash's mood became a lot more cheerful. Along the way, they didn't encounter any demonic beasts, nor did they encounter any traps to hinder the intruders. Even if there were, after being immersed in the sea for a long time, it was estimated that they had already lost their effectiveness. The only problem was that the long climb had consumed most of their strength, and everyone's movements were getting slower and slower. When they finally reached the end of the stone steps, the team couldn't help but burst into cheers. The last checkpoint of the ruins was not a stone door, but made of metal, which reflected a bright light under the illumination of the torch. Thunder pushed the door with both hands, and the heavy door made a harsh friction sound as it slowly opened. Ashes held her sword in one hand and took the lead to enter the room. After looking around and confirming that there was no danger, she let Tilly and the other witches step into the room. As the torches were hung on the surrounding walls, a wide hall appeared in front of everyone. Although it was wide, it seemed empty, and they could see everything at a glance. There was nothing worth pondering about. Is this the ruins? She rubbed the stone table that had been soaked in water. Except for some stone tables and stools, there is nothing here. Indeed, there is not much left, Thunder nodded. It has been sleeping at the bottom of the sea for too long. Except for the stones, it is difficult to preserve anything. I also told Her Royal Highness Tilly, but she insisted on coming to see it in person. What about those red stones? Tilly opened her mouth. Where did you find them? On the ground. At that time, they were scattered all over the ground, probably dozens of them. However, now there was nothing left. Ashes looked down at the wet and slippery ground where seaweed had already grown. Thunder was not the only explorer who had arrived here. After taking turns to plunder, it would be strange if they could still find magic stones. But Tilly was still full of enthusiasm. She held the torch and carefully looked at every corner of the hall. In particularly dark places, she would also ask the sailors to add a few more torches. Molly summoned her magic servant and spread it out on the ground to serve as a cushion for everyone to rest on. Ashes followed beside Tilly and watched her touch the wall. Hey, suddenly, the fifth princess stopped. What is this? Ashes followed her gaze and saw a wall covered with green moss, faintly reflecting a little light from the fire. Tilly reached out and tore off the green moss, revealing a gem that was half buried in the stone wall. It was also bright red, sparkling and translucent like the magic stone. It was shaped like a prism and was almost as thick as a person's arm. But there were golden filaments embedded around it, like a card slot to fix it inside. Even after soaking in the sea for such a long time, the golden filaments wrapped around the stone were still as smooth as new. Tilly tried to pull it, but the gem did not move. Let me do it, said Ashes. The fifth princess shook her head, as if thinking about something. Then she put her hand on the prism and closed her eyes. Suddenly, a light flashed in the center of the prism. Ashes thought she was seeing things, but soon there was a rumbling echo behind the wall, as if some mechanism had been triggered, and soon it spread throughout the hall. There was a creaking sound everywhere on the stone wall, and a soft white light suddenly appeared on the wall. Even the ceiling overhead was lit up. The sailors stood up in panic and pulled out their weapons, but they did not know which side to defend. In the end, they could only stick close together back to back, gathering around Molly's magic servant. However, no monsters rushed out. Chapter 235. Genius in 1 second. Remember Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. How did you do this? Thunder opened his mouth wide in disbelief. There were dozens of small holes in the wall, and in each hole was placed a stone that emitted a pure white light. Not only that, even the edge of the ceiling was placed in a circle of these strange glowing stones. Under the soft light, every detail of the hall could be seen clearly. This was the first time Ashes had seen the explorer reveal such an expression, and she could not help but feel a sense of joy in her heart, Don't you know that when a witch injects her power into a magic stone, it can stimulate an additional ability? What about these? Are they also magic stones? Thunder carefully took out a glowing stone and held it in his hand. After leaving the hole, its light did not weaken in the slightest. I don't know, Tilly shook her head. These stones may have been glowing here for hundreds of years, if the ruins really have such a long history. Before, they were hidden behind the stone slabs, so they have not been discovered, and to open this special mechanism, only a witch can do it. You didn't make them light up? No, they can light up by themselves. Tilly grabbed a magic stone and held it in front of her eyes, the pure white light shining on her beautiful face. If this is a device that needs magic to maintain, then it can't be taken down so easily, just like how a candle can't easily leave a candle. So far, the holes in the wall have nothing special other than providing a place to put the glowing stones. If it is really as you said, that it can shine on its own and can continue to shine for hundreds of years, then its value is simply immeasurable, Thunder said in amazement. You have to know that the snow crystal produced in the kingdom of Everwinter, a fist-sized piece, can be sold for hundreds of golden dragon, and its brightness is not even half as bright. When the sailors heard such an astonishing price, the way they looked at the stones suddenly changed. According to our previous agreement, you can take half, Tilly said non-committally, or it could be said that her focus was not here at all. With plenty of light, she was able to explore the hall more closely. Ashes could not bear to see her tear apart the seaweed with her bare hands, so she simply swung her sword and swept away all the plants attached to the wall as if she was mowing grass. Soon, the second magic stone hidden in the wall was also discovered. Tilly used the same method to inject magic into it. Along with the crisp sound of metal clashing, everyone was surprised to see a huge slab of stone slanting down from above Tilly's head. On both sides of the slab were several taut copper ropes, and on the inside was actually a well-cut staircase. Finally, one end of the stone slab slowly fell to the ground, and the other end led to the ceiling. Ashes looked up and saw a horizontal metal door blocking the end of the passage. Tilly, seeing the fifth princess walk up the stone stairs without hesitation, Ashes couldn't help but say, "Let me go first." "It doesn't matter. This isn't a treasure trove." She climbed to the top of the stone staircase and held onto a protruding magic stone beside the door. The metal door quickly opened. Seeing that Tilly went through the door and disappeared into the ceiling, Ashes had no choice but to follow her closely while holding the giant sword in her hand. After passing through the roof, Ashes couldn't help but stare at the ceiling, only to see a room that was much smaller than the hall. The walls were also inlaid with glowing stones, but what surprised her even more was that there was almost no trace of water immersion here. The wooden table, chairs, bookshelves, cabinets, all the furnishings were intact, but they were covered with a thick layer of dust, and even broken spider webs could be seen. The bookshelves were neatly arranged with a row of books, all of which were dyed gray by dust. In addition to the open books on the table, there were also cups, kettles, and pen holders. The quill pen was left with a lonely pole, and the ink had long since dried up. Compared to the hall below, which was full of algae and shells, it was like a different world. Thunder was the third to climb up. After looking around, he gasped, "This is an abandoned residence." Tilly picked up the open book on the table, gently patted the dust off, and flipped through the pages. "Someone once lived here for a long time. What is written here?" "I don't understand." She shook her head and showed the book to the other two. "These are all words that I have never seen before." The ones on the bookshelves seemed to be the same. Ashes wiped the dust off the spine of the book with her fingers. The words were like strange wavy lines, and she could not read them at all. "We can take it back and study it slowly," Tilly said with a smile. "According to the agreement, the books and the magic stones belong to me." "Of course." Thunder touched his beard. "But when you find something, I hope you can share this old story with me." "No problem." The three of them carefully searched the room on the second floor and soon got a general idea of the situation. They did not find new magic stones, but found a strange thing at the other end of the room. At first glance, it looked like a thick metal tube. One end was inserted into the stone wall, and the other end was gradually shrinking. Finally, it was only as thick as a wrist, and there was a glass lens embedded at the end. What is this? Ashes knocked on the body of the tube, and a series of crisp echoes came from inside. Apparently, the middle of the tube was hollow. It's a bit like a nautical telescope. Maybe the people who live here often use it to observe the outside world. Thunder put his eyes close to the lens and looked for a while. It's dark and I can't see anything. It should be broken. Not necessarily. Tilly pointed to the wall behind the metal tube. Look here. Ashes looked in the direction of her finger and saw a copper plate with a handle embedded in the wall. There was a small hole under the handle, which seemed to be the place for a key to be inserted. Princess Tilly walked over and tried to pull the handle, but the copper plate did not move. It's locked. Let me do it. Ashes grabbed the handle and pulled it hard. The whole copper plate suddenly fell off the wall. It seems that you guessed right, Thunder applauded. It's another magic stone mechanism. A huge magic stone was stuck in the groove behind the copper plate. Different from the previous two, it looked much bigger and its color was purple. Do you want to activate it? Ashes asked. Yes, Tilly nodded without hesitation. She held the stone with both hands, but this time there was no movement for a long time. What's going on? It's too big. Her forehead was already covered with sweat. I feel that it is constantly absorbing magic power. It seems that the mechanism behind it is very big. Let's forget it, Ashes said with a frown. She knew that once the magic power was exhausted, the witch was likely to directly fall into a coma. It was obviously not a good choice to use all of her magic power in such a dangerous place. No, it's almost healed. I can feel it. Before Tilly's voice died away, a loud sound came from inside the wall. It sounded like continuous thunder, and then the whole room shook. It's an earthquake. Thunder held the metal tube to prevent himself from falling. Ashes immediately grabbed Tilly and held her in her arms. Dust fell down, and the three of them could not help but cough. The shaking lasted for nearly a quarter of an hour before it gradually calmed down. Molly poked her head out of the staircase. What happened just now? A new mechanism, Ashes said, curling her lips. Is everything okay down there? Everyone was scared and several parts of the roof fell. Fortunately, I covered them with the magic servant. The little girl came to her side. Lady Tilly, what are you looking at? Unexpectedly, Tilly did not answer her. Her eyes were fixed on the end of the metal tube. After a long time, she let out a long sigh. It's incredible. Ashes curiously moved her eyes closer, and then was shocked speechless by the scene in front of her. Chapter 236. Roland unfolded the letter and handed Maggie a piece of beef jerky. Coo! Maggie opened her mouth and took the jerky, swallowed it in 2 or 3 bites, then obediently went to the table and buried her head in the feathers. Good to see the letter, my dear brother, or Your Highness Roland Wimbledon. I have received your letter, and I am in complete agreement with you. Although I don't know why you suddenly changed your temperament, changed your previous playboy style, and are actually willing to help witches, but since you have already done so, then the church has become our common enemy. Perhaps you already know that I have become a witch, which is the reason why everyone is willing to believe in me. But you are a prince, a genuine aristocrat, and it is really incredible that you can gain the trust of so many witches. Ever since I found out about you, I've often wondered how you managed to do this. If you were like other aristocrats, using witches as tools, then it would be impossible to gain the approval of Ashes, and she would not have chosen to let Maggie stay in Border Town. In addition, I am also very interested in the steam engine that Maggie mentioned, as well as the theory that knowledge can promote the evolution of abilities. Especially the latter, I hope to have the opportunity to discuss it with you in detail. As for your invitation, I have thought about it over and over again, and found that I have no reason to refuse. The establishment of an alliance requires trust and sacrifice. If we are hesitant and cowardly, in the end, the church will only take advantage of us. Therefore, I have attached a list of most of the abilities of Sleeping Island's assistant witches to the letter. You can choose the ability you need the most, and tell me through Maggie. If everything goes well, they will leave for your territory next month. For safety reasons, it is best not to exceed 5 at a time. In addition, Please specify a reliable transport plan and send people to protect them. Every loss of a witch is a major loss for Border Town and Sleeping Island, and it will also cast a shadow over our cooperation. I hope you can take good care of them, just like you take care of your subordinates. If possible, please let them participate in the evening basic knowledge classes. I believe that if any witch's ability can become stronger, it will be good news for us. Just as you said, the church has revealed their true intentions, and it is only a matter of time before they take over the 4 kingdoms. Hopefully, when that day comes, you'll be ready for it. If it was too difficult to resist, Sleeping Island would be your haven of refuge. Of course, I will try my best to help you in the fight against the invasion of the church. Finally, I hope that we can put an end to the oppression of the church and build a new order, a new kingdom where not only witches, but everyone will not suffer from unwarranted persecution. Your sister, Tilly Wimbledon. Roland put down the letter, and the joy in his heart was indescribable. He smiled and put away the letter, then took out a piece of beef jerky and extended it to Maggie. She immediately stuck out her head and pecked away the food. Goo goo goo. He stroked the silky feathers on the back of her neck, and she closed her eyes in satisfaction. Thank you for your hard work, but Lightning went to King's City with the fleet and should be back in a few days, Roland said with a smile. You can go find Nana or Leaf to play, or go to the bathroom to take a bath and sleep. Goo goo. Maggie flapped her wings, then jumped from the table, flew out the window, and soon disappeared. The sentence she had just said should be, I'm not tired, I want to go find them to play. Roland found that even if the other side spoke in the form of a pigeon, he could still understand the general meaning. Is this the power of habit? Come to think of it, he had never thought that Tilly would actually accept his invitation and even attached a list of the witch's abilities. This was simply a big treasure trove. Although the letter didn't say how long they could stay, it would take at least half a year for them to finish the entire primary education course. If he added another 100,000 questions, and the course was extended to a year, how much change could these witches bring to Border Town? Moreover, after their evolution, the advantages for him far outweighed the disadvantages. Staying in Border Town could effectively promote the development of the town, and even if they returned to Sleeping Island, they would still be a living propaganda symbol. With the word of mouth from these people, the number of witches willing to go to Border Town would only increase, and Tilly wouldn't be able to stop this trend. Roland believed that, compared to enticement or coercion, waiting with sincerity was the real long-term strategy. All in all, this reply had surprised him far more than he had expected. The openness and positivity of the other party made him feel as if he had met a godly teammate. This way, he would no longer be fighting alone against the church. As for the safe transport route, he had already considered it. Avoiding the port of Clearwater or Seawind region, he would directly land on the uninhabited Bund in the south of Border Town. After arriving at the hilly area, he would then take a hot air balloon over the mountain peak and directly reach the hinterland of Border Town. During the whole journey, he wouldn't have to pay attention to the church, Timothy, or Garcia's forces. The more he thought about it, the more excited Roland felt. He resisted the urge to immediately browse through the appendix to select a witch, and instead focused his attention on what he had to do at the moment. After all, the witches from Sleeping Island would only be sent next month, and the most urgent problem facing Border Town right now was the construction of the houses. Since the first army had left for King's City, there had been an endless stream of refugees arriving in Border Town. In order to prevent the demonic plague from relapsing, Roland had arranged for them to stay outside the western wall, where a long line of wooden sheds had been set up for the refugees to temporarily live in. Together with the serfs farming on the banks of the Redwater River, the total number of the two groups had already exceeded 8,000 people. If the refugees were transported for a few more days, this number was likely to exceed the 10,000 mark. Providing food for these people wasn't a problem. After all, since the months of demons, Border Town had never stopped importing food, but the problem of accommodation was obviously a big problem. It was now summer, and living in a simple wooden shed was also acceptable. In addition to shielding them from the sun and rain, it was also very ventilated, but there were a lot of mosquito bites. But once winter came, There was no difference between living in a wooden shed and being outdoors. The temperature outside was the same as inside the wooden shed. If they didn't move into a brick house, most of them wouldn't be able to survive the long winter. In other words, in the remaining 6 months, Border Town had to build houses and dormitories for 10,000 people to live in. Roland spread out a piece of paper and began to write. He intended to transfer some of the workers who had been building the Kingdom Avenue to the construction of the houses. After all, the road being late for 10 days to half a month wasn't a big problem, but the people freezing to death in the territory would be a stain on his political achievements. Even when he had just crossed over, he was faced with a difficult situation where he didn't have money or people, but during the first months of Demons, no one had frozen to death or starved to death. Now that he had the witch union and the steam engine, as well as a rich income and manpower, he naturally wouldn't allow such a situation to happen. At this moment, Carter suddenly walked into the office. Chapter 237. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. When Roland rushed to the laboratory next to the Redwater River, he found that the damage was not as serious as he had imagined. At least the main room used for refining acid was undamaged, but the window glass of the side room was broken into 2 pieces. Love, go, small, say Netku, my lord, please save our mentor. He's badly injured and he's about to die. Seeing Roland appear, a group of disciples immediately surrounded him, but they were quickly stopped by the guards. Roland waved his hand, gesturing for everyone to calm down. Where is he? Let me see first. Then he turned to Carter and whispered, Where's Nana? I've already sent someone to invite them. They should be here soon. Roland nodded and entered the laboratory under the protection of his personal guards. Kyle Maxwell was lying on the floor. There were specks of blood on the floor that extended all the way to the side room. He had probably been dragged from the scene of the accident to the main room. His face was a blur, blood and pus mixed together, probably caused by the strong acid splashed on him during the explosion. His hands were missing a few fingers, and his white finger bones could be seen through the flesh. The apprentices had already taken emergency measures. It could be seen that they had encountered similar situations in Redwater City. They had brought the victim out of danger, bandaged the wound to stop the bleeding and asked for help. These measures were quite effective. However, this kind of injury was usually treated with herbs and self-healing methods, and there was an 80 to 90% chance that it would be incurable. Roland ordered the guards to guard the door and wait for Nana's arrival. He and Carter walked into the side room, wanting to find the chief alchemist's finger. Otherwise, even if the little girl cured his injury, he would not be able to continue his chemical experiments, which would be a great loss for Border Town. It's like being swept by a strong wind, Carter said, pinching his nose. There's also a strange smell. That's the smell of nitric oxide. Roland glanced around the small room. The windows were all open, so the possibility of poisoning was not high. At most, it was just some residue. The glass bottles on the test bench broke into pieces, and the acid flowed down the table, forming water stains on the ground. Remember not to touch them directly with your hands, said the prince. There are gloves in the cupboard. Ever since Soroya's ability had evolved, he had also sent over a dozen pairs of ultra-thin anti-corrosion gloves to the laboratory. However, looking at the current state of the alchemist, it was obvious that he had been experimenting without wearing the gloves. If he had worn gloves, even if the explosion broke his fingers, at least the severed fingers would remain inside. In the storage cabinet above the test bench, something caught Roland's attention. After he removed the strangely shaped bottle, he realized that it was actually the liquor sold in the convenience market. Moreover, a lot of the liquor had been drunk and there was only half a bottle left. Kyle actually brought liquor into the laboratory? It was hard to imagine an experienced chief alchemist drinking during an experiment. Your Royal Highness, Miss Nana has arrived, the guard reported. Well, continue to guard the door, don't let any apprentices enter. Leaving Carter to continue to search for the severed fingers in a pile of broken glass, Roland returned to the main laboratory. Is that him? For Nana, this level of treatment was already a common occurrence. Compared to the little girl who was so scared that she didn't dare to see blood, or fainted when she saw a terrible wound, she had grown a lot, whether it was in terms of ability or courage. First, treat the corrosive wounds on his face, Roland nodded. Carter is looking for his severed fingers, so you can reconnect them later. No need, Nana smiled proudly. I can now directly cure this kind of small injury. Roland was startled, only to see her place her hands on the alchemist's chest and close her eyes. Kyle's injuries immediately changed, and in a moment his face was completely healed, and the severed fingers began to stretch out, but the speed was much slower. First the bones, then the flesh, and finally the fingernails and hair. After about a quarter of an hour, his fingers were completely restored to their original state. At this time, Carter also came out from the side room. Your Royal Highness, I only found 3 fingers, and the last one may have been blown to pieces, huh? When did you do this? Roland asked in surprise. About a week ago, when I was training with a chicken, I discovered that I don't need to use a severed limb. As long as I pour enough magic into it, it can slowly grow back. She stuck out her tongue. I probably remembered that you said that every part of a person's body is composed of cells, so the severed parts will certainly have cell losses. Since magic can make up for these losses, why can't I make up for the whole body? Then I tried to do so. Can any part of the body grow back? Nana shook her head. This method is too laborious. If it's just a finger, it's fine, but if it's an arm or a leg, I can't do anything. After all, my capacity for magic is far less than Sister Anna's. That's because you're still underage, Roland thought. In addition, is this the performance of the ability evolution, or is it because of the training, resulting in the current magic being able to achieve effects that were previously impossible to achieve? Nightingale wasn't here, so it was impossible to judge whether Nana's magic had changed shape, but if it was only because of the increase in magic, then the little girl's performance after adulthood was absolutely worth looking forward to. Your Royal Highness, he woke up, Carter said. What happened? Kyle frowned, first looked at his intact hands, and then touched his face. Shouldn't I? Should have died from serious injuries in a chemical accident, but a witch saved your life. Next to me is the person who saved you, Miss Nana Pine. Roland decided to directly tell the chief alchemist about Nana's identity. A person who was able to rush to Border Town for a chemical reaction formula shouldn't be a stubborn person. Even if she was disgusted with witches, she wouldn't go so far as to abandon the work at hand and run to the church to report. Plus, now that Border Town had Lucia, it was only a matter of time before the alchemist and the witch cooperated. Oh my God, did you say that this witch can cure the wounds caused by alchemy, no chemical experiments? He hadn't expected Kyle's reaction to be quite different from what he had imagined. Ha ha, that's great, Your Royal Highness, so I don't have to worry about the danger. I can test the reaction to my heart's content. So what happened in the end? Roland was relieved in his heart. How did you bring the liquor into the laboratory? No, Your Royal Highness, it was just a test product, the chief alchemist said excitedly. You asked me to try to make it, and I made it. You mean mercury fulminate? Yes, Your Royal Highness. The missing reaction material was alcohol. He said in one breath. Before this, I had experimented with dozens of raw materials without any progress. When I was bored, I went to the market to buy some wine to drink, then I suddenly remembered that the elementary chemistry mentioned that alcohol is an organic solvent. It is also a necessary raw material for some reactions. So I distilled and purified the liquor and tested it as a new reagent. The result was a success on the 6th try. At that time, I also recorded the heating time and reaction temperature, and took out some of them to test. Their characteristics were the same as you said. They were gray needle-shaped crystals or powders, extremely sensitive and irritable. Just when I wanted to filter out the precipitate in the remaining few test tubes, the test tubes suddenly exploded. So that's how it was. Roland also remembered that mercury fulminate was produced by mixing excessive nitric acid with mercury and ethanol, or by directly reacting with nitric acid * mercury with ethanol. Well done, he patted Kyle's shoulder. This merit is enough for you to receive the highest honor and generous rewards in Border Town. As a result, The impact primer with fixed bullets finally had some clues. To be continued. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 238. After returning to the office, Roland immediately began to draw the new machinery. During the days when the First Army and the witches went to King's City, Roland was not idle. On the contrary, Roland felt that he was even busier than usual. Even when Nightingale was not by his side, the time he spent alone with Anna was also very little. In addition to settling the refugees who had been transported by the ships, he also let Anna and Lucia test the composition of the smelting products, as well as build a new smelting furnace. In the past, whether it was smelting iron or steel, he purely relied on his experience and intuition to carry out the smelting process, and in the end, he did not know what the composition was. Now, with Lucia's help, Roland finally had a method to accurately determine the composition of a metal ingot. With the ability to decompose matter, he could repeatedly compare and obtain the required detailed data for smelting, such as the stirring time after melting, the specific amount of charcoal added, and whether or not to add limestone and other additives to remove sulfur and phosphorus, or to add other metal raw materials to obtain the alloy, and so on. Based on these data, Roland was able to summarize the standardized smelting process in order to obtain the same quality of iron ingots or steel after repeated production, and at the same time, to dispel the fog of material science and technology little by little. And the new smelting furnace was also built for this purpose. It was a square furnace with a length and width of 4 meters and a height of 2 meters, with the bottom sloping towards one end. The thick outer shell was made of cast iron, and the inner layer was covered with clay bricks, as well as Soroya's mud coating, which had excellent heat resistance. The lowest end was equipped with a movable gate, which was pulled by a steam engine. Considering that those advanced heating methods, such as oxygen blowing, electric arc, and so on, did not have the conditions to implement, the furnace was simply not equipped with any combustion device, and completely relied on Anna's black fire to smelt the molten steel. After adding raw materials according to the tested proportion and smelting, the molten steel was directly discharged from the rear gate. The furnace could produce about 50 tons of molten steel at a time, and Anna only needed a short quarter of an hour to complete the smelting process. Adding the feeding and tapping time, it only took about half an hour, and the output was basically enough to meet the current production of firearms and cannons. The current smelting mode in Border Town was that the blast furnaces and shaft furnaces were responsible for producing a large amount of pig iron, which could be used to manufacture daily ironware and steam engines, and could also be used as raw materials for further smelting in iron furnaces to produce wrought iron or steel. The blueprint that Roland was currently drawing was a set of production equipment for bullet stamping. With a stable and reliable source of steel, the stamping machinery's processing and assembly would no longer have hardware difficulties. The success of the trial production of mercury fulminate made the mass production of the new bullets even more urgent. Although Anna's black fire cutting was efficient and accurate, it would still take a long time for one person to complete the entire process. If the stamping assembly line was put into production, more than 30 ordinary people could operate it after training. At least 10,000 bullets could be produced in a day, and the soldiers would no longer need to manually reload the ammunition. After dinner, he spent the long time drawing. It wasn't until the midnight bell rang outside the window that he had a rough idea of what to do with his sketches. Of course, this was only the most preliminary concept design. He didn't know if some of the details were feasible. He still needed to test it before he could make a final decision. Normally, Roland would have yawned, but today he was in high spirits and didn't feel sleepy at all. After putting away more than 10 pieces of draft paper, he took out the parchment attached to Princess Tilly's letter from the drawer and spread it out on the table. Finally, the long-awaited part of selecting the visiting witches had arrived. The list listed the abilities of more than 60 auxiliary witches. According to Maggie, the total number of witches on Sleeping Island should be around 200 to 300. Obviously, Tilly didn't list all the auxiliary witches' abilities on the list. This was also in line with a leader's approach, to take the initiative to extend a hand of friendship rather than to put everything on the table. For the other party to do this, It was enough to show their sincerity in forming an alliance. Roland replaced a new candle and concentrated on looking at the witch's abilities on the appendix. He had to say that this was a very difficult choice to make. After many comparisons, he decided on a list of 5 visitors. Then Roland spread out a piece of parchment and began to write a reply. Dear sister, I'm very happy to see your letter. I'm very excited and gratified by the decision you made. With your help, I have a greater chance of blocking the church's attack. The reason I can gain the witch's trust and support is also because of this. In the entire continent of Grey Castle, only Border Town has completely erased the influence of the church. The natives not only accept the witches, but even fight side by side with them. From resisting the demonic beasts to fighting against the church, my people and the witches have formed an inseparable whole. Now, everywhere in Border Town, you can see them participating in the construction. The steam engine that made you curious was also realized with the help of the witches. This is a good sign, and what I want to do is to spread this situation throughout the western region, until the whole kingdom. For this, I must destroy the entire church, turn the saying that witches are evil into dust, and save all the people from foolishness and ignorance. This is a long process, and I need more assistance from you. As for what made me make this decision, and what made me not be as indifferent to everything as I was in the past, these trifles can be slowly explained in detail when there is a chance. The content of this letter is limited, so I won't repeat it. As for the witch's visit next month, I am very much looking forward to it. Please do not worry about safety. I have planned a direct route for them to Border Town, completely avoiding the church's eyes and ears, and also without the need to rely on any port. The only risk lies in the navigation, but I think that with Maggie leading the way, the possibility of the ship getting lost is very small. I will attach a map of the specific route and send it with Maggie to Sleeping Island. After these witches arrive in Border Town, they will naturally be able to participate in the basic knowledge classes. The so-called knowledge promotes the witch's ability to evolve. I am more inclined to say that a deeper understanding of the world has led to their transformation, whether it is nature, magic, or their own understanding. There is no doubt that with every witch whose ability has evolved, our odds of winning against the church will increase by 1 point. My view on this point is exactly the same as yours. Finally, I will list the 5 selected witches here, hoping to see them as soon as possible. Terrain Shaping Lotus. Status Maintaining Candle. Winemaker Evelyn. Beast Tamer Honey. And Eye of Truth Sylvie. Chapter 239. A week later, the First Army Expedition team and the witches finally arrived in Border Town. From the day of departure, this mission had taken almost half a month, which was 5 days later than expected. The main reason was that when the fleet set foot on the way back, the Stronghold agent Perot Hull sent a messenger to report the cause of an unknown disease in Longsong Stronghold. Since Roland had already warned Perot, when the disease was discovered, he tried his best to take quarantine measures, completely closing off the entire urban area, and immediately sent a message to Border Town. After receiving the epidemic report, Roland let Maggie set off at top speed along the Redwater River all the way to the east, looking for the fleet carrying the soldiers of the First Army, and then let them change their route to Longsong Stronghold at the fork of the Redwater River, and then return to Border Town after eliminating the demonic plague. Roland led the remaining members of the First Army and the families of the expedition team to the dock to welcome their smooth return. Accompanied by the familiar army march, the soldiers excitedly saluted the prince, many imitating the knight salute, kneeling down on one knee and shouting, "Long live the king." After walking down the dock, they tightly embraced their loved ones, while Echo timely fired a gun salute. The atmosphere was unusually lively, attracting many serfs and fugitives to watch. After returning to the castle, Iron Axe gave a complete report of the mission. "You mean, there are witches among the enemies who attacked the First Army?" Roland thought for a moment. It is unlikely that they were sent by the rats. Theo also thinks so. He even thinks that the rats were also sent by other forces, otherwise this group of scum would rarely leave their nest. In King City, besides Timothy, only the church can control the rats and have witches. Iron Axe said, even those great nobles can't take out a bargaining chip that could make the largest local Blackstreet organization turn out in full force. But Timothy himself is in the eastern region, and daring to send witches to fight alone, I think the church is a bit more suspicious. Roland thought of the experience of Vendi and Ashes, and felt that it was not strange that the church had a group of secretly trained witches. Are you sure she's dead? She was hit in the chest by Nightingale, and her chest cavity was broken. Iron Axe nodded. We buried her in the wheat field, where we found the remains of the sentry soldier. On the last day, the team of 300 people had encountered a night attack by a large number of mice. In the end, 1 person died and 4 were injured. The only victim was killed by the enemy witches. The 4 wounded were all wounded by the crossbows of the enemies who managed to get close to them. The continuous fire from the revolving rifles ended the battle before it even reached the melee stage. The wounded were also properly bandaged. After returning to Border Town, they immediately received treatment from Nana. Because of Lily's existence, the wounds were almost never infected. As long as the crossbow didn't hit the vital organs, after the bleeding was stopped, the chances of the wounded surviving were extremely high. In general, Roland was very satisfied with the results of the First Army's first expedition. As for the possibility of someone sneaking into the sentries, he didn't know much about it. He only knew that it was necessary to set up sentries to monitor each other. As for the specifics, he would leave it to Iron Axe to figure out. Thank you for your hard work. Tomorrow, I will hold an award ceremony at the town's central square. Go and inform all the members of the First Army. After Iron Axe left, Roland let out a long sigh. You did a good job. He took out a bag of grilled fish from the drawer and put it on the table. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid they would have been in danger. Nightingale appeared and accepted the dried fish with a smile. Before we set off, I told you that I would take care of everything. How was the opponent's strength? She was agile and very decisive. She should have gone through several years of training. If I hadn't entered the mist at the same time she turned around and tried to resist, I might have been hit by the choking powder she threw. Nightingale shrugged and casually recounted the fight, but he knew that it all happened in a flash. I didn't want to kill her, but when I saw her stare at Vendi, I understood that nothing could stop her except death. Roland was silent for a moment. Do you remember what you said to me when we returned from Stronghold after defeating Timothy's militia? Nightingale thought for a moment. It wasn't your fault? That's right, he nodded. If she was a witch raised by the church since she was a child, she would only regard you as traitors and degenerates. Without several years of getting along with her, it would be difficult to turn her rigid thinking back to the right track. At least, you saved the lives of Vendi and the others. Nightingale laughed. Are you comforting me? Roland coughed twice. I really think so. Rest assured, I won't feel sad for the enemy. Although she is a witch, the path she chose is completely different from the future I want to see. I understood this on the ship when we came back. Nightingale took out a piece of dried fish and stuffed it into her mouth. I defeated the enemy and protected my sisters. I was just doing my duty. It's good that you can think like this, Roland said with relief. It seemed that he had underestimated her. He had thought that she would feel lost and confused about killing a witch with her own hands. He didn't expect that she would be able to adjust in such a short time. It seemed that whether it was her mind or faith, Nightingale was approaching maturity. But there is one thing I want to ask you, she said after swallowing the fish and hesitating for a moment. What? These days, did you and Anna do anything? Although Nightingale's voice was getting lower and lower, her eyes were still staring at the prince. You know what I'm talking about. Roland almost knocked over the cup in his hand. Why do you ask this? I've been busy these days with the refugees. I didn't even have the chance to be alone with her. Her eyes suddenly lit up. You didn't lie. Of course not, Before Roland could finish the second half of his sentence, Nightingale suddenly disappeared in front of him. Then he felt soft lips on his own. The touch was fleeting, leaving only the salty taste of dried fish. After a long time, he realized what she had done. Wait. But before he could say anything, two slender fingers sealed his mouth. Although he couldn't see her, he knew that Nightingale was right beside him. "I know what you want to say." Her whisper came into his ear. "I don't want to change anything, nor do I intend to be in front of Anna. I just want to stay by your side, that's all. Please forgive me for not daring to show myself, because right now I don't know what kind of expression I should use to face you. Your Highness, you don't hate me, do you?" Roland opened his mouth. It was impossible for him to say that he hated Nightingale. The obstacles in his heart came from the past 20 years of cognition, and not from a simple preference. On this point, he couldn't deceive himself. Chapter 240. After dinner, Anna walked into the kitchen with a big bag of bird beak mushrooms. These white mushrooms were collected by Maggie from the misty forest. Different from ordinary mushrooms, bird beak mushrooms usually grew on the top of huge trees and lived by absorbing the nutrients of the trees. They were also the favorite food of some birds. Although their taste was extremely delicious, and the thick umbrella handle was as delicate as tender meat, because they grew in high places, it was difficult to detect them from below. There were not many people who were willing to climb up the trees to pick them. On her birthday, her mother would more or less pick some and make 2 mushroom dishes to celebrate her birthday. Compared to the moldy coarse bread and tasteless oatmeal, the unique taste was unforgettable. Although she no longer had to worry about not having enough to eat, and the food she ate every day was much more abundant, she still wanted to personally make these 2 delicious dishes that could only be tasted in Border Town and share them with His Highness Roland, who was busy every day until late at night. The stove in the kitchen had already been extinguished, but this was not a problem for Anna. She threw the firewood into the stove and summoned the black fire. Soon, the flames in the stove burned vigorously. At this moment, Nightingale suddenly jumped out from the wall. "Hey, what are you doing?" "I want to make some food for His Highness. He has been sleeping very late recently." "What about you?" "Ah." She touched the back of her head. "I just wanted to find some snacks to eat. I'm a little hungry." After a pause, she curiously stuck her head out. "What are you going to make?" "Well, honey roasted mushrooms and mushroom soup." Anna opened the bag and revealed the bird beak mushrooms. "They are all unique to Border Town. Do you want to try them?" Nightingale nodded and quickly said, "Can you teach me how to make them? I also want to learn how to make them." "Sure," Anna laughed. "It's quite easy." After cutting the mushrooms, she grabbed a large handful and gave it to Nightingale. "First, spread a layer of butter evenly on both sides of the mushrooms, then carefully roast them over the fire until they are golden brown. Be careful not to roast it for too long, or it will be burnt black." Nightingale took the bird beak mushrooms and imitated Anna by smearing oil on both sides of the mushrooms. "Has Your Highness been working late recently?" "Yes, in order to settle the refugees and draw some blueprints for new machinery, he almost sleeps after midnight every day. There were a few times when I passed by the office, and I could see light shining through the crack of the door." Anna nodded. "You've been gone for almost half a month. You miss His Highness, don't you?" Nightingale's hand trembled slightly, and the mushroom fell into the butter. "It's actually not that bad. It's not just you." Lightning, Lily, Echo, and Vendi all miss His Highness very much. They said that there isn't even a place for them to bathe. They've wanted to come back for a long time. Anna suddenly felt that the other party's expression was a little strange. "Hey, what's wrong?" "No." She shook her head, picked up the mushroom, and smiled a little embarrassedly. "So it's like that?" "Indeed. I miss him." Anna directly pinched the oiled mushroom with her hand and put it into the fire. "If I leave His Highness for half a month, no, maybe only for a few days, I can't wait to see him again." Meeting with Roland Wimbledon in the dungeon was the most incredible moment of her life. Even today, when she thought about it, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. If it wasn't for His Highness, even if she could continue to live, she would only live in ignorance and confusion, just like those numb townspeople. It was His Highness who taught her the beauty of this world. Whether it was the sauce-covered pepper steak or the theoretical basis of natural science, his appearance filled a new aspect of her life. It finally made her feel that she was no longer the same as others, but a unique witch. The other sisters must have felt the same. They believed that as long as they got along with His Highness for a long time, it was impossible not to fall into his unique charm. Regarding this, Anna firmly believed. Did I roast this for too long? Nightingale lifted the iron fork. The side of the mushroom had already turned brown. A little. She couldn't help but laugh. The birdbeak mushroom is very delicate, so the roasting time must not be too much, not too little. You'll be able to master it after a few more tries. I'll prepare the ingredients for the stew first. Nightingale dipped the slightly burnt mushroom in honey and salt, then threw it into her mouth. Well, it's quite delicious. Looking at the girl who skillfully mixed the various leaves and ingredients together, she asked curiously, "Did you often do this before?" "Yes, pickling food, grinding wheat flour, doing part-time work for the nobles, helping the neighbors' sheep bathe and shave," Anna said. "Besides going to teacher Carr's school, I spent most of my time doing these things." She paused. "But after my mother passed away, my father never allowed me to go to the school again. He didn't even allow me to leave the house." "I'm sorry, it's okay, it's all in the past." Anna's eyes were bright, like a blue lake under the moonlight. "Compared to most of the witches, I'm already considered a very lucky one, isn't it?" The mushroom slices that had been smeared with oil curled up slightly under the flame, emitting a slight crackling sound. After sprinkling some salt and roasting it twice, they could already smell the fresh fragrance. The milky smell of the heated butter mixed with the unique smell of the bird beak mushroom, making one's mouth water. Finally, they spun the mushroom in the honey jar, completing the roasted mushroom. Whether it was the bird beak mushroom itself or the honey, both could be collected from the misty forest. For the locals, if they happened to saw down a tree with both a beehive and a bird beak mushroom on top, it could be considered an extremely lucky day. When the stew pot emitted white steam, the two of them had also finished roasting and seasoning their respective mushrooms. "It's done, at least it looks good." Nightingale stuffed another piece into her mouth. "It turns out that I'm also quite talented in cooking. This piece seems a little salty." "The time is just right." Anna looked out the window at the night sky. "Let's deliver it to His Highness. Please help me deliver it to him." She clasped her hands together. "Please, aren't you coming with me?" "No," she smiled, "because I don't know what kind of expression to show when I see him." Chapter 241. Roland was designing the pattern of the medal for tomorrow's award ceremony. Logically speaking, this wasn't particularly important work, and he should have finished it a long time ago. However, he had been feeling uneasy since the afternoon. To be precise, it had been since Nightingale kissed him. Although he had a vague premonition before, she didn't say it out loud, so he couldn't take the initiative to say it. Now that it was confirmed, how should he respond to her feelings? Nightingale's question also made him understand that he didn't hate Nightingale. In fact, he even felt a little smug. Who would hate a beautiful, calm, and beautiful woman who he had been with day and night? Roland couldn't respond to her directly because of his 20 years of experience, the practical problems he would face in the future, and Anna's thoughts. Especially the last point, he couldn't ignore Anna and only act according to his own preferences. Perhaps he could only leave the answers to these questions to time. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in, it's not locked," Roland shouted. At the same time, he was a little surprised. Who would come to his office at this time? It was Anna who pushed the door open. She was holding 2 plates in one hand and a crock in the other. Before she could speak, Roland already smelled the tempting aroma. "Food." Anna smiled and put the plates on the table. She then took the bowl that covered the crock and poured out the milky soup. "This is called honey-roasted mushrooms. I made 1 plate, and Nightingale made the other. The one in the crock is mushroom soup, seasoned with common herbs. It looks delicious." Roland licked his lips. "Sit down and eat with us." Anna nodded and sat across the table. "Where's Nightingale? Why isn't she here?" "She said that she didn't know how to look when she saw you," she answered. "I don't quite understand why she should care." So that's how it is. Roland sighed softly in his heart. Although he said it confidently and without any regret, he even boasted shamelessly that it wasn't his fault. He only did what he wanted to do, but in reality, he was no better than a squirrel who plucked up his courage to peek out of the hole. Really, was he bold or cowardly? Since that's the case, let's eat first. He picked up a piece of mushroom and put it in his mouth. The sweetness of the honey instantly melted in his mouth, followed by the juice contained in the mushroom. In an era without hazy, this rich and delicious taste was enough to make people speechless. The salt further enhanced its freshness, and finally, the mushroom's own chewy texture, delicate and tough, the taste was simply impeccable. These are not ordinary mushrooms. After Roland swallowed it, he immediately discovered that it was different from the others. Generally, it was good enough that mushrooms could keep their texture smooth and refreshing after being barbecued. How could they have their own juice? It's not like they were made from soup. Yes, it's a specialty of the concealing forest. The people in the town call it the bird beak mushroom. Anna smiled and explained the mushroom's origin. Because of this, I want you to try it. Roland tasted another mushroom used to make soup. It was equally delicious, and the juice it contained was much richer. It felt like he was eating a soup dumpling, and when he chewed, it had a crispy texture. This long-lost taste made him think of an extremely common, all-purpose seasoning MSG that was suitable for any dish in the future. Before the discovery of sodium glutamate, chefs could only use indirect methods to enhance the freshness of dishes, such as using whole chicken, bones, mushrooms, and soybeans to make soup stock. Although the chefs of the future preferred to use the original flavor to show off their exquisite cooking skills, it must be said that even a lousy novice could increase the taste of the food by more than one level after adding MSG. If the bird beak mushroom was naturally plump and juicy, it was simply the ideal material for MSG extraction. Growing on trees, it was difficult to pick, so it was not popularized. This was not a problem for Roland. Are there a lot of these mushrooms? I don't know, but it should be a lot. Anna took a small bite. Maggie said that she only flew around the edge of the forest once and helped me pick a big bag. That's really good news. Roland neatly finished the mushroom slices that Anna roasted and reached for another plate with his chopsticks. I was worried that the steak would either be sprinkled with pepper or honey. I'm almost sick of eating it. What's wrong? No, nothing. His heart was full of tears. Oh my God, this piece is really salty. Did Nightingale accidentally drop it into the salt jar? Although he thought so, he still swallowed the mushroom. After that, Roland found that the rest of the mushroom slices were either burnt or not fully cooked, and one side was burnt yellow and the other half was half raw. Fortunately, the bird beak mushroom itself was very delicious. To a large extent, it covered up her poor cooking skills. I'm full. He put down his chopsticks. After finishing the second plate with great difficulty and drinking the soup, his stomach was already bloated. Thank you. Well, there's also Nightingale. Anna's smile was so cute that Roland could not help but reach out and pinch her nose. The latter let out a whimper, leaned forward and kissed the prince's cheek. Then I'll go wash the dishes. Remember to sleep early. After the witch left, Roland let out a light breath. Although he did not want to ignore Anna's thoughts, some things were not so easy to say. He helplessly thought that this was probably related to his identity as a mechanical dog. After all, during his entire academic period, he rarely interacted with the opposite sex. Even after graduating, he successfully entered a large-scale design institute and had a considerable salary. This still did not change. Fortunately, there was still a long way to go before he could completely defeat the church, so he could slowly think about what to do next. As for now, it was better to concentrate on the work in front of him. The next morning, when Roland stepped onto the temporary wooden platform in the square, he was surrounded by a sea of people. The current border town, compared to its previous desolate and poor appearance, had undergone earth-shaking changes. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was completely new. The sparse old houses in the town had all been demolished, replaced by construction sites and brick houses. Moreover, the latter were all built according to the overall planning of the residential area, looking neat and tidy at first glance. Although it only occupied 1/3 of the town's land, It was enough to accommodate the original 2,000 residents. When the 3-story and 4-story residential buildings were put into construction, as well as the subsequent residential areas, the same piece of land, the population would only increase. At present, the name border town was obviously not in line with the real situation. There was no town that could have a population of nearly 20,000 and a professional army of 600 people. He intended to wait until the next spring to officially promote this place into a real city. Under the effect of Echo's ability, Roland's voice quickly made the crowd quiet down. Today, it is Border Town's first award ceremony, used to commend and encourage those who have made great contributions to this place. From the time I arrived here, almost half a year has passed. We have defeated the demonic beasts, defeated the Duke, and built the town into what it is today. Many people have paid a lot for this, and among them, there are a few outstanding people. They are not nobles, nor are they rich merchants. Before working for me, they were just ordinary people, just like you. He looked around and said loudly, "But now, they will get a generous reward, including a medal made by me, 100 golden dragon, and 5 acres of land." This news set off a wave in the crowd. Not to mention the medal and land, just the 100 golden dragon was a huge amount of money that made people envious. This kind of ceremony will not only be held once. In the future, every year there will be an award ceremony, regardless of birth, regardless of wealth. As long as you have outstanding achievements, you can get this highest honor. Chapter 242. Obviously, there were only 2,000 people gathered in the square, but the momentum was no less than that of the large-scale gatherings of tens of thousands of people in the future. Roland secretly sighed. Echo's ability was really useful. The main purpose of choosing these people was to set an example for the people. Among the 3 of them, none of them were nobles. Iron Axe was from the Sand Nation of the southern region. Although Kyle was the chief alchemist, he didn't come from a prominent family, and had also climbed up step by step from an apprentice, and Nana was a witch. There were foreigners, civilians, and witches. In the words of the future, it was simply impeccable political correctness. Roland hoped that through such a ceremony he could instill his ideas in all the people. Border Town only cared about merit, not origin. The first person to come forward to receive the award was Iron Axe, and Roland personally handed him a gold medal with the Grey Castle Tower emblem, a gear, and a ring of wheat. The soldiers of the First Army under the stage raised their hands and applauded, and many people whistled. You should all know his name, Iron Axe, the commander of the First Army. Roland turned to face everyone. Before the arrival of the months of the demons, he was just an ordinary hunter in the town. Iron Axe has never missed a battle in Border Town, and just a month ago, he led the soldiers of the First Army to King's City to rescue the refugees besieged by the demonic plague in the eastern region. Now, more than 6,000 people are temporarily living outside the city walls, and it was him who brought them back. Most of the people in the square were natives and soldiers of the First Army. There were only a few hundred serfs and refugees, but under Echo's leadership, the atmosphere was not cold at all. After Roland's words, the crowd immediately echoed with the approval and cheers of the refugees, and the intensity of the applause was no less than that of the First Army. Iron Axe also seemed very excited, probably because he had never thought that, with his identity as a member of the Majin clan, he could also win the prince's favor. He first performed the military salute formulated by Roland, and then knelt on one knee, giving the kingdom's knight's salute. If not for Roland supporting him, he was afraid that he would have performed the Sand Nation's salute. Get up. As a soldier, you only need to salute, Roland said with a smile. Thank you, Your Highness. His voice trembled slightly, as if he was trying to suppress his emotions. The prince comfortingly patted Iron Axe's shoulder and handed him 100 golden dragon coins. Then he asked Kyle Sichi to come to the front of the stage. This might be the first time you've seen him. He's the chief alchemist of the Redwater City Alchemy Workshop in the center of the kingdom, Mr. Kyle Sichi. As soon as these words came out, the subjects all sucked in a breath of cold air. Chief alchemist? Isn't that a sage who is respected and courteous even in front of the king? Just like the royal astrologers? No, the status of alchemists is even higher than that of astrologers. After all, no one can say for sure whether the latter's prophecy will come true or not, but at least the things that alchemists make are real. And he's from the alchemy workshop of Redwater City. I heard that only the alchemy workshop of King's City can compare to him. In the Four Kingdoms, alchemists and astrologers had a transcendent status. For the common people, the alchemists, who were known as sages, were more worthy of preaching than the great nobles and lords. Roland was very satisfied with everyone's reaction. He stretched out his hand and gestured for them to calm them down. Then he said, although Mr. Sichi didn't personally participate in the previous battles, the several improvements of the flintlock, from single shot to continuous shot, are inseparable from his chemistry laboratory. This is also an important guarantee for the First Army to win. Without these alchemy, chemical products, Border Town wouldn't be able to truly win peace and tranquility. The prince paused for a moment. By the way, the chemistry laboratory is currently recruiting apprentice alchemists. After receiving the town's universal primary education and passing the examination, all subjects can be recruited. Those who pass will not only get a generous reward, but also have the opportunity to become an outstanding master alchemist like Mr. Sichi. The crowd once again burst into an uproar. Kyle himself had an impatient look on his face. He took the medal and angrily said, "You called me here just for this? It's really a waste of time. I might as well do a few more experiments. This is a great opportunity for publicity. Don't you often complain about the lack of manpower?" Roland shrugged his shoulders. "Wait until the scale of the laboratory is doubled. I intend to write the intermediate chemistry and give it to you to teach." "Intermediate chemistry?" Kyle immediately bowed. "Thank you, Your Highness." Although concentration was very important, training successors was equally urgent. The greater the foundation of the masses, the easier it would be for the project to produce results. It was the same for scientific research. Roland didn't intend to put all his eggs in one basket. Of course, he wouldn't let go of such a perfect advertising opportunity. The last person was Nana. Looking at the nervous little girl who had come to his side, Roland couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Compared to hiding during the months of demons, now he finally intended to push the witches in front of the public. After nearly half a year of preparation, Border Town had now ushered in the best situation. Choosing Nana as the representative was also a choice he had made after careful consideration. In the First Army, she was called an angel by the soldiers, and her reputation was even higher than Iron Axe's, second only to himself. Many of Border Town's residents had also received her treatment. Whether it was the mine accident or the mechanical injury, everyone had developed the habit of looking for the little angel for treatment. The serfs, after repeatedly watching the performance of the play, The Witch Story, were no longer as resistant to witches as before. In the play, the image of a brave woman with a tortuous fate won many people's favor and sympathy. The fugitives also survived because of Lily's ability. Even if some of them hated witches, they wouldn't speak ill of them after being rescued. Not to mention that they weren't weak individuals who were chased by the church. At least in Border Town, these women with extraordinary abilities were protected by the Lord. And the most crucial point was, even if there were believers of the church who wanted to expose them, it would be very difficult to set off any storm in the western region. Border Town was now completely under their rule. The church in Longsong Stronghold had been razed to the ground by Timothy, and the church had lost its stronghold to monitor the western region. Unless they went to the faraway Fallen Dragon Ridge or Redwater City, they wouldn't be able to find even a single priest who had been reported. Before Roland could even open his mouth to introduce her, the square burst into thunderous cheers. "Miss Nana! Miss Nana! Miss Nana has come! Miss Angel, thank you for curing my husband. Little girl, if you have time, you must come to my house to eat. I specially raised 2 chickens. Whether it's steamed egg custard or stewed chicken soup, it's all good." "Nana, she's looking at me. No, she's looking at me." Nana couldn't help but cover her mouth, her eyes becoming moist. Roland believed that at this moment, the other witches had the same feelings as her. They had finally gotten rid of the evil identity that the church had imposed on them. From now on, they could be like ordinary people walking under the sun. Roland smiled and patted her head. Don't be afraid, simply respond to everyone's enthusiasm. Don't forget, you are now the representative of the Witch Union. Chapter 243. The first award ceremony lasted until noon. Roland, who was also the laureate, commentator, and host, was exhausted. Fortunately, the ceremony finally ended with the ringing of the noon bell and the sound of the cannon salute. He returned to the castle, sweating profusely. Just as he stepped on the third floor, he saw Anna leaning against the door of the office with a smile. "What's wrong?" "You'll know when you go in." She blinked her beautiful lake blue eyes. "It can't be some kind of prank show, right?" Roland opened the door with a confused look, and then immediately froze in place. He saw 12 witches standing neatly in 2 rows, with Scroll and Vendi at the front. Seeing the prince appear, all of them simultaneously lifted their skirts, bent their knees, and bowed to him. "Ahem," Scroll was the first to speak. "Your Royal Highness, your actions have proven everything you said, and the sisters are deeply grateful for it. No words can describe our gratitude, and in the future, please let us continue to serve you." "So that's how it is," Roland breathed a sigh of relief. "I thought you were going to say goodbye together." Vendi couldn't help but laugh out loud. "How could it be, Your Royal Highness? This is the holy mountain that witches dream of. As long as you don't drive us away, we hope to live here forever. And this is also what I want to see. In fact, you don't have to do this. I'm not only helping you, but also helping myself. You don't have to be too serious. I prefer your relaxed appearance." I said we don't have to be so formal," Lily snorted. "See, he thinks we're too serious." "Didn't he say that? Didn't you just agree to it?" Mystery Moon muttered in a low voice. "Traitor." "Well, let's go to the dining room first. Your Royal Highness still needs to change clothes." Scroll helplessly held her forehead. "By the way, I heard from Miss Anna that you've been sleeping very late recently. Please take care of your body. Before that goal is achieved, you can't fall down." "Don't worry," Roland smiled. "My body is very good." After the witches filed out, only he and Anna were left in the office. "What? Are you going to thank me too?" Roland teased her. I want to say the same thing as them." Anna smiled. "No words can describe my gratitude." "And then, you want to live in Border Town?" "Not necessarily." Roland was startled. His heart skipped a beat. "But because you won't stay here forever," Anna tilted her head and said. "And no matter where you go, I'll always follow you." A warm feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. From the day he met her, her thoughts had never changed. Whether it was the invitation from the Witch Cooperation Association, or the critical moment of fighting against the demonic beasts, she always chose to stand with him. At this moment, Anna suddenly took 2 steps forward and hugged him gently. "Wait, there's sweat," Roland reminded. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she put her head on his chest, as if she wanted to remember the smell, and took a deep breath. He finally gave up the idea of pushing her away. His hands wrapped around her white neck and didn't let go for a long time. After lunch, Roland took a cold shower and quickly threw himself into work. He called Car Van Bait, spread out a detailed map of Border Town, and pointed to the Redwater River. "I want to build a bridge here." "Not a pontoon?" Car thought for a moment and said, "Please forgive me, Your Highness, but the Redwater River is nearly 100 meters wide. It is almost impossible to build a stone bridge. Even an arch bridge can only cross 1/3 of the distance. Moreover, the Redwater River's water flow is so great that there is no way to put a foot on the pier. Even a stone pillar as thick as a person will be washed away. In addition to rafts and pontoons, there is no bridge on the entire river." "It's not a stone bridge, but a steel bridge," Roland explained. "There are 3 bridges in total. The middle pier will be solved by the witches. You only need to set up the bridge approach in advance. But I require a slope at the bridgehead, raising the entire bridge so that the river sailboat can pass, and the mast won't touch the bottom of the bridge." "Isn't that like building the bridge into the sky?" Carr asked in surprise. It's only about 6 or 7 meters above the ground. He drew a sketch of the 3-span iron bridge on the sketch. In order to better develop the south bank in the future, as well as the construction of the dock, there must be a bridge over the river that won't affect the passage of the boats. Although the pontoon bridge is simple, it is equivalent to blocking the river, which is disadvantageous to the subsequent development. The First Army's expedition to King's City gave Roland a lot of inspiration. He found that the rivers within the territory of Grey Castle were accessible in all directions, and the major cities were basically built next to several main rivers. If he were to launch a war in the future, he would have several shallow water-heavy gunboats, which would definitely provide firepower support and a sharp weapon to attack the city. After all, the power of a naval gun, which was famous for its caliber, was far greater than that of a field gun. And if he wanted to build a boat, he first needed a dock, so the steel bridge plan came into being. But I don't have any similar bridge construction experience. Carr seemed a little hesitant. I don't either, Roland shrugged his shoulders. Just think of it as your first time slowly exploring it. You can first build a bridge on the shore to test it, and then move it to the Redwater River when there are no problems. He took the opportunity to instill the other side with the construction concept of a prefabricated, one-off hoisting construction. Just like the installation of a water tower with Hummingbird to reduce its weight and your student Anna to help with the assembly and welding, it shouldn't be too difficult. As you wish, Your Highness. He nodded. In addition, I have a very important project for you. The prince moved his finger to the castle area. I intend to expand the backyard and enclose all the open space on the highland. At the same time, I will build a 3-story building here. If everything went well, next month Tilly's 5 witches would arrive in Border Town, and there would be no extra rooms in the castle. Although it could be temporarily changed to 3 people in a room, in the future there would always be more and more witches, and it would be impossible to always make do. The superior living environment and all kinds of novel and comfortable experiences were also one of his strategies to keep the witches. Whether it was the ancient people's difficulty in changing from extravagance to frugality, or the modern people's sugar-coated bullets, a beautiful and comfortable life would always make people indulge in it. A 3-story brick house? It's not completely a brick house, Roland smiled. Its name should be called a brick and concrete structure. The pillars and roof beams are made of reinforced concrete, just like human bones. This kind of structure can make the house even higher, and in the future, it won't be a problem to build a 4-story or 5-story house. Reinforced concrete? Carr repeated with a confused face. It is a mixture of cement, sand, and stones with steel bars embedded in the middle to strengthen its bending performance, he said. Of course, the specific amount of each ingredient needs to be strictly tested. If the configuration is successful, it will even be stronger than natural bluestone. In theory, this kind of thing had a very large amount of flexibility in its quality. Both were concrete, but the cement bought in the countryside and the cement mixed in the mixing station were 2 completely different things. The steel bars were the same. Some people, when building their own houses on the homestead, didn't even put pebbles, or used iron wire or bamboo instead of steel bars. When Roland stayed in the countryside, he had witnessed the process of several country villas rising from the ground. And he also intended to imitate them. After all, it was only a 3-story house. No matter how much they skimped on the materials, it would still be difficult to collapse. In addition, he hoped that through the witches' residential building project, Carr would be able to master this kind of perfect building material that could change its shape at will, just like artificial stone. As one of the development directions of the construction industry, concrete occupied almost half of it. He wasn't proficient in construction, and what he knew was only superficial knowledge from the countryside. Therefore, broadening the field of vision of stonemasonry and leading it to the right path was the right approach. Do you want me to slowly explore this? He asked. Chapter 244. After the moon had risen to the top of his head, the hot air gradually cooled down. Sitting in the garden, Theo could see the distant pubs, brothels, and casinos with a little light coming from the windows. Under the curtain of the night, it was like the stars in the sky, showing the prosperity of the city. Only in the inner city of King's City could one see such a scene. Even after the demonic plague ended, nearly a third of the civilians in the outer city had died. It still wouldn't affect the mood of the nobles in the inner city to drink and have fun. If you listened carefully, you could even hear the faint sound of crying carried by the evening wind. This house with a garden and a pond was bought by him for 150 golden dragon coins. It was located on the hillside near the outer edge of the inner city, so even during the day there weren't many people wandering around. In addition to meeting with informants and exchanging information, he usually didn't live here. Instead, he would choose to spend the night in an inn or go to the underground trumpeter for a few days. "My lord, they are all here." A man holding an oil lamp came out of the room. It was Hill Fox, who was lurking in the skeleton's fingers. "Light the candles." Theo nodded and walked into the house. Under the dim candlelight, Hill and 5 other people were sitting around a round wooden table. When they saw the guard appear, they all got up and bowed their heads. Theo looked at them blankly, hoping to find out whether they were reliable or not from their expressions and small movements. Unfortunately, Miss Nightingale had already returned to Border Town with the fleet. If she was here, she would immediately be able to make the most accurate judgment. They were Hill's companions, the members of the Pigeon and Top Hat acrobatic troupe, full of resentment towards the new king. A week ago, during the siege of the pier, it just so happened that one of the people lurking in the Dreamland water had informed Theo about the rats' night attack plan in advance. Now that the demonic plague incident had gradually subsided, he decided to meet this group of people in King's City. If what Hill said was true, then they would be good seedlings for intelligence. "In addition to Mr. Fox, the rest of you should first introduce yourselves," Theo said. "My name is Rocky Mountain, my lord." The most robust man took the lead and spoke in a low, muffled voice. He was nearly 6 feet tall, and the bulging muscles on his arms showed that he was full of strength. Acting as a strong man in the acrobatic group. Currently, he has joined the Blood Sale. "I'm a clown." The short man sitting next to Rocky pointed at his nose. He looked to be the youngest among them, about 18 or 19 years old. "Of course I'm a clown in the group, but I don't mix with the rats. Instead, I perform some tricks in the taverns." Jom and Neil. The next 2 people were a pair of brothers. Be it in appearance or attire, they were no different from the typical commoners in the outer city. They had dedicated all their property to Priest Fairy, and were now devout believers in the church. Theo couldn't help but think, could it be that both of them had a favorable impression of Hill's wife? He suppressed his doubts and looked at the last person. "They all call me the magician, my lord." The other party bowed again. "I originally pretended to be a frustrated person and threw myself into the Dreamland water. Unfortunately, most of them died or escaped. Even Fierce Tooth Tanis was killed by the Judgment Army of the church. Everyone is busy looking for a new target." "Died at the hands of the Judgment Army?" Theo raised his eyebrows. "Aren't they secretly supported by the church?" "I also heard it from others." He spread out his hands. After the siege of the dock, Tanis was ambushed by the skeleton fingers when he returned to the Eastern District. In the end, he only had a few dozen people left. That night, he angrily took his men who had stayed in the nest to find the church, but the next day, only 2 or 3 of them came back. According to them, he quarreled with Priest Fairy and then was stabbed in the chest by the God's Punishment Army. In short, the Dreamland water is finished. So that's how it is, Theo thought. It's probably because of the loss of the strength that they had accumulated with great difficulty. The leader of Fierce Tooth was in a precarious position. He wanted to seek help from the church, but was refused, which led to the dispute. However, these were all unimportant details. He only needed to know that the Dreamland water was now only in name. There was no doubt that this was good news. He might be able to take advantage of this opportunity to win over a group of rats who had nowhere to go and expand his own sources of information. "Presumably, you have already learned my name from Hill." Theo knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, "I am His Highness Roland Wimbledon's personal guard, responsible for collecting information from all over the kingdom. Since you are willing to come here, in a sense, you have already expressed your intentions. However, for the sake of seriousness, I still want to ask you one more time, "Are you willing to serve His Highness?" "We are willing," the 5 of them said one after another. "As long as I can get justice from Timothy Wimbledon, I am willing to do anything," Hill added one word at a time. "Very well, from now on at the same time every week, we will meet here. If there is any urgent information, you can also report it to me in advance, as long as you place a pot of purple flowers at the entrance of the residence." Theo continued, "After I take note of it, I will wait for you in my room that night. When you knock on the door, remember to use 3 long and 2 short signals. Do you understand?" Seeing them agree in unison, Theo nodded with satisfaction. A qualified intelligence agent will not easily expose himself. The first thing you have to do is to hide your identity. Whether it is to inquire about information on your own, or to send people to collect suspicious information, you must always keep this in mind. If you need money, you can apply to me. Remember, don't act rashly. Timothy will not sit on the throne forever, and His Highness Roland has personally promised this. He paused for a moment and then asked, "So, do you have anything else to say?" "My lord, Timothy has returned from the eastern region today," Hill said. "You should have also received the news." In the afternoon, the new King's Knight team had entered the city through the eastern gate with the flag raised high. Many residents had witnessed this scene. Theo didn't answer. He knew that the other side must have something else to say. "But in the evening, I heard from Black Hammer that Timothy seems to be planning to recruit a group of rats to join the army, in exchange for the opportunity to become free people. Several leaders of the Skeleton Fingers have already gone to the palace. It doesn't sound like a fabrication." "Recruit rats?" Theo remained calm on the surface, but his heart fiercely sank. Obviously, these rats could not fight as official soldiers, so it was very likely that they had used pills to strengthen them and used them as a surprise attack tactic, just like the attack on Longsong's stronghold last time. But this time, where was the other side's target? "This is interesting news," he said in a low voice. "Remember to keep an eye on the rats, and if there is any news, immediately report to me." Chapter 245. Outside the city wall of the Western region, under the guidance of the soldiers of the First Army, the refugees underwent an unprecedented identity check. Understandably, naturally knew that the population was His Royal Highness Roland's most valued wealth. In order to bring these people back to Border Town, His Royal Highness had spent a lot of Golden Dragon, and even didn't hesitate to send the First Army on an expedition to King's City. When the bill from Marjorie's Chamber of Commerce was placed in front of Barav, his jaw almost dropped. In the past half a month, the caravan had spent more than 2,000 Golden Dragons on renting ships, transporting goods, and food supplies, which was equivalent to the price of 4 steam engines. If it weren't for the deposit for the 2 sailboats last month, the financial statement this time would probably be in the red. After the refugees were brought back, the tedious and huge statistical work fell on his shoulders. Almost all the officials and apprentices of the city hall were mobilized. They set up wooden sheds and passageways at the foot of the city wall to classify and record these people. Looking at the dozen or so lines of refugees slowly passing through the checkpoint, Barav felt like he was looking at a group of moving coins. Compared to the long queue of ordinary civilians, the professional talent channel that he was personally in charge of was much more deserted. So far, only 50 to 60 people had passed through. "I'm the carpenter." At this time, a middle-aged man walked over cautiously. "I heard that any craftsman can get a residence?" "Yes," said Sirius Daly. "What is your name? Can you read?" The former knight of the Wolf family was doing a good job in the Ministry of Agriculture. At least until now he had not made any mistakes. Barav was very satisfied with his judgment of people. Although this was a census, there were only so many literate people in the city hall, so they had no choice but to pull people from other departments over. "My lord, my name is Mazer." The other party paused. "I don't know how to read." "Can't read or write?" "Yes." The middle-aged man lowered his head. "Well, if it's a carpenter." Sirius rummaged through a stack of inquiry forms, looking for a form marked with the word carpenter. "Ah, found it. Let me ask you a few questions." This preliminary examination method was thought up by His Royal Highness. He gathered the craftsmen of various industries together and asked them some professional knowledge and corresponding solutions. Then he recorded their answers and formed a set of inquiry forms. In this way, as long as they asked a few questions during the audit, they could immediately know if the other party was lying or not. The first time Barov saw this kind of lie detection method, he couldn't help but want to applaud the devil's careful thinking. If one didn't work in this industry, most civilians wouldn't understand these things. If a person wanted to impersonate someone, 2 or 3 questions would be enough to make them choke and speechless. What is the tool used to flatten the surface of wood? It's a flatbed plane, my lord. What are the commonly used saws? Frame saws and pull saws. Occasionally, hand saws are used when cutting small parts. After a few questions, Mazer was able to answer most of them. Furthermore, his tone of speaking gradually became smoother. Well, it seems that you are indeed a carpenter. Sirius was about to write down the man's name on the identity register when Barov stopped him. My lord, don't be so quick to judge. First look at his hands. He looked at Mazer. Stretch out your hands. Hearing these words, Mazer was startled, and with a puzzled face, he spread out his hands. The skin on his palms was extremely rough, and there were many soil grains mixed in the cracks. Below each finger was a thick callus, looking weather-beaten. If he is a carpenter, his palms shouldn't be so rough, especially the 2 meat pads at the bottom of his palms, which often rub against the wood, will become smooth and hard. In addition, carpenters often need to use black paint to draw outlines, so the palms will be stained with a large amount of black ink that is difficult to wash off and become black, not yellow. Barov calmly said, also, when he answers, he will always first look away. Many people will inadvertently show a similar expression when recalling memories from the past that they don't often use. If he is a carpenter, his answers should be very natural. Is that so? Sirius's eyes widened. Barov looked at the surprised Mazer and said in a deep voice, you should have heard the warning from the First Army when they summoned you. Any act of impersonation, deception, and refusal to register will be severely punished. Either you will be assigned to the mines, or you will be expelled from the Western region. Now, do you still think that you are a carpenter? No, my lord, I was wrong. Mazer couldn't help but kneel on the ground. The carpenter is my neighbor, I just often watch him work. Go over there and line up. Seeing the other side flee, Sirius was speechless. My lord, how do you know these things? During the months of demons, I once did a census for His Highness, and I have dealt with every carpenter in the town, so I conveniently wrote them down, Barov replied, pretending to be careless. Seeing the knight's shocked and admiring expression, his heart suddenly floated with a sense of pride. Although the devil's methods were ingenious, they would still be deceived by some people. Only a person like me can make up for His Highness's shortcomings. Moreover, under His Highness's influence, the way I deal with problems has recently changed. Barov couldn't help but secretly sigh. A civilian like this, in the past, would definitely be punished using Thunder's methods, in order to deter those who were ready to cause trouble. But now, he directly let him go, probably to save His Highness the Golden Dragon. After all, every fugitive was worth a lot. If they didn't work for Border Town for more than 10 years, they simply couldn't make up for the cost of transporting them from thousands of miles away. When the next fugitive passed the professional questioning, Sirius didn't immediately register, but looked at Barov. He looked at the interrogator a few times, nodded and said, "You record it, I will take him to His Highness." After passing through the hole in the city wall, on the other side was the shed set up by Roland Wimbledon, which was also the last inspection checkpoint. Here, they would be personally questioned by His Highness, and if they were confirmed to have no problems, they would receive a resident identity card and become an official resident of Border Town. At present, there was a shortage of housing in Border Town, so they could only give priority to the craftsmen. As for the fugitives who didn't have any skills, they would have to wait outside the city wall for another 2 or 3 months. Barov also had an ID card. It was a piece of colored cardboard, almost the size of a palm, with his head drawn in the upper left corner. It looked just like a real person, and in the middle was his name, address and number. On the back of the paper was printed the emblem of Greycastle's 2 guns, as well as His Highness's signature and seal. Whether it was the paper itself or the film wrapped around it, the material was very strange. Whether it was soaked in water or baked on a fire, it couldn't damage the ID card in the slightest. There was no doubt that this thing was definitely made by the witch named Soroya. His Highness Roland seemed to want to promote the ID card to the whole town, so that in the future, no matter if it was to buy food or pay, they would all have to have a certificate. Since the award ceremony, when the Pine family's miss had been awarded a medal, His Highness obviously didn't intend to hide the existence of witches anymore, and Barav didn't want to care about who was right and who was wrong, even. He began to hope that His Highness Roland would be able to defeat the church and completely unify Grey Castle. There was no doubt that the higher His Highness's position was, the more generous the rewards he could get. Of course, there was still a long way to go to reach this step, so he could think about it later. Now that the population of Border Town had already surpassed that of Longsong Stronghold, His Highness also revealed to him the city construction plan for next year. Once it was connected to Longsong Stronghold, more than half of the Western Territory would become a whole. The scale would undoubtedly surpass King's City and become the most magnificent city in Grey Castle. And as the City Hall manager, what kind of promotion would he get at that time? Chapter 246. Genius 1 second. Remember Love Yo Yo Go? Say net, to provide you with wonderful novels to read. Roland was sitting in his office chair, carefully looking at the statistical report made by Barav. It took a full 3 days for the City Hall to sort out more than 6,000 refugees. Among them, the proportion of craftsmen was low, and in the end only 186 people had passed the review. Of course, this was also related to the intensity of the review, because it involved the allocation of housing and the issuance of identity cards. In Roland's consideration, in the future, only residents with identity cards could be considered as his official subjects, so he had to firmly guard them. In the early days, when the population was small and relatively easy to control, he would cultivate the town's core supporters. After the population grew, he would then use the power of the people to assimilate the other newcomers. After all, people were social animals. As long as the environment was like this, there would be more and more people who would agree with his ideas, and he would really be able to bring a better life to the people. Then I'll leave the accommodation of these craftsmen to you. Whether they are single or have a family, they will at least be allocated a separate suite, Roland said. Yes, Barav replied. Your Highness, may I ask, will these houses be given as a gift? According to the rental rate, he shook his head. The reason why the natives are given a new house for free is because most of them already have an old house. It can be considered as exchanging their old house for a new house. But if these people are given a house as a gift, it will not be conducive for them to go out of their homes and actively devote themselves to work. Of course, the rent can be calculated according to a lower grade, and tell them that as long as they work hard and save enough Golden Dragon, they can directly buy a house. I understand. After a moment of silence, Roland suddenly asked, after the award and honor ceremony, how many refugees appeared? So far, there is not a single native, and there are 7 serfs. Barav paused. The Eastern region refugees chose to leave, a total of 115 people. Is that so? He softly exhaled. The moment he decided to push the witch to the front of the stage, he already knew that such a situation would occur. In order to assess the reaction of the people and to avoid any accidents, Roland had specially arranged for a team of firearms to be stationed a few miles away from Border Town. They were to intercept the escapees and at the same time count the number of people to see the degree of acceptance of the witches. Although this answer wasn't perfect, at least it was very good. The Aborigines had completely accepted the witches, which was close to what he had expected. The number of serfs who had fled was much less than what he had expected. It seemed that the effect of the drama of living close to the bottom of the society was the best. But the refugees from the eastern region, who had obviously received the witches' treatment, and whose homes had been destroyed and they were in a desperate situation, still chose to leave. This made Roland feel a little surprised. Your Highness, I suggest that they should all be put to death, Barav said calmly. Those who have decided to leave under such circumstances must be people who have been deeply influenced by the church. In the foreseeable future, they will not stand on the side of the king, and in all likelihood will turn into believers of the church, so there is no need to show them any mercy. Not necessarily. The people who are truly devout to the church should be the more than 300 refugees who are unwilling to leave King City in the face of the demonic plague. The prince closed his eyes. These people may just be unable to change their ideas and stubbornly believe that the witches are evil, so they want to escape from this place. Even so, they are still your potential enemies, Barav insisted. If he had met this group of people on the battlefield, Roland would not have hesitated to defeat them, but because of their backward thinking and inconsistent beliefs, he would wantonly wield a butcher's knife to kill a group of civilians. This was a huge psychological obstacle for him. After hesitating for a moment, he finally refused this proposal. I will let Nightingale go and interrogate these escapees. If there are any spies or scouts hiding among them, they will be caught and hanged. The others will be expelled from the western region. Barav's eyes flashed, he lowered his head, and it was only after a long time that he replied, "As you bid, Your Highness." "Is there anything else to report?" "For the time being, no, Your Highness." He coughed twice. "I will go and deal with the distribution of the houses." "Don't worry, these annoying things can be taken care of slowly." Roland opened his eyes, stood up and said, "First, come with me to take a few photos and relax your mood." "Take photos?" Barav was startled. "You will soon know," the prince said with a smile. In the castle's front courtyard, he called Carter, Iron Axe, and Soroya together. In the corner of the courtyard, he saw a few 4 or 5 meters wide wooden boards. The ground was also covered with a canvas. Border Town is currently not big, but after the land in the south is developed, and then connected to Longsong Stronghold, the size will be dozens of times larger than it is now. If you walk from east to west, it will take you 1 or 2 days, so you must have something to quickly travel back and forth between places. The cost of raising a horse is very high, and it is impossible to let every person spend a lot of time learning how to ride a horse. Roland said while opening the canvas, "I intend to promote this means of transportation in the town. It is easy to use, and the price is much lower than a horse." "This, what is it?" Carter was immediately attracted by the novelty in front of him. 2 wheels, an iron frame, is it a cart? With 2 wheels side by side, even if it is a cart it would be difficult to maintain balance. Barav shook his head. "I don't see how it can replace a horse." Only Iron Axe remained silent, quietly waiting for the prince's explanation. Roland smiled. "This thing is called a bicycle. I will demonstrate it to you." He put his feet on the pedals, put on a standard starting position, and with 1 foot, he began to ride the bicycle on the stone road in the courtyard. With Anna's precision machining and Soroya's coding technology, it wasn't difficult to make a bicycle by hand. Its principle and structure didn't have any difficulties. The parts that needed to use rubber could be replaced with a coating, such as the inner tire, which was directly drawn on a roll of paper tube. For this purpose, Roland had also specially made a simple pump. The outer tire and the brakes were coated with a harder cowhide, the frame was made of hollow iron, and the brake wire was made of anti-rust copper wire. The only problem was the chain, which could only be cut into shape by Anna and then connected into a long string. As for the classical bicycles that had pedals directly installed on the wheels, he simply didn't like them. After riding a lap, Roland pressed the brakes and easily jumped down. Looking at the row of stunned subordinates, he couldn't help but feel very proud. This was the excellent mount that a traveler should have. Compared to horses that needed to be tamed and fed, a bicycle was much more refreshing. I plan to open a new bicycle factory in the industrial area to produce this kind of transportation tool. Not only do I need to recruit workers, but I also need to do a good job of advertising, striving to promote it to the whole territory as soon as possible, Roland explained simply. "This is the reason why I called you here. You must first learn how to ride a bicycle, and then let Miss Soroya paint your appearance on a wooden board. I want all the people to see that as long as they spend 1 or 2 golden dragon, they can have the same mount as the Lord, the commander of the First Army, the chief knight, and the city hall manager." To be continued. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 247. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? to provide you with wonderful novels to read. What was the symbol of the industrial age? The first thing that came to Roland's mind was the rolling steam train running on the rails. The cast iron cylinders covered in oil stains, the thick crankshaft and huge iron wheels, the rhythmic noises and vibrations, and the steam whistle that cut through the air. For him, his first understanding of the beauty of machinery began from the steam train. Compared to the later mechanical systems that hid the structure under the outer shell, used high-precision processing to reduce vibration, and emphasized sound insulation and absorption measures, it undoubtedly more intuitively showed the power and beauty of industry. He also wanted to cover his territory with rails, so that the train could drag people and goods to and fro all over the Western Territory. But although the ideal was good, the reality was not satisfactory. Not to mention building a steam train, just laying the rails required a lot of steel, which far exceeded the iron ingot production capacity of the North Slope Furnace Group. Therefore, he settled for the next best thing. Using a human-powered bicycle became Roland's best choice. The more flat roads were built in the territory, the greater the profit of the bicycle. Moreover, compared to the complex structure of the steam train, it almost didn't need to be maintained. Occasionally oiling the chain was enough. If he planned to mass-produce the bicycle, he naturally couldn't let Anna make it by hand, so he first had to build a factory and train a group of professional workers for the production and vehicle assembly. Considering that the earliest the Kingdom Avenue could be completed was next spring, the initial scale of the factory didn't need to be too big. After Anna manufactured the necessary machine tools for the assembly line, the workers would slowly familiarize themselves with the process, so that they could produce 10 bicycles a month. Among them, the most technical content was the chain, which needed to be stamped by a machine and then manually inserted into the pins to form the shape. However, rubber parts such as tires and brakes still needed to be made by Soroya's ability. This part of the workload wasn't big. As long as the base mold was prepared, the magic pen could quickly draw a lot of them. The same was true for bearings. Since he couldn't make a reliable rolling bearing, he could take a small piece of steel casing and use it as a sliding bearing. After the inner ring was covered with a smooth mirror coating, the effect was not much worse than the former. When the bicycle was first introduced, only the aristocracy could afford this expensive means of transportation. In order to popularize it among the masses, in addition to wantonly advertising, Roland also intended to implement an installment payment system to reduce the purchase pressure as much as possible. Of course, only those who had obtained an ID card could apply for this form of payment from the city hall. The three of them spent the whole afternoon in the garden. Catranes, worthy of the title of Chief Knight, was the first to master the riding technique. Iron Axe followed closely behind and was the second to successfully ride a lap around the garden. Barav was the only one who didn't succeed after more than 10 attempts. He was either on the verge of falling or unable to move forward in a straight line. In the end, Roland had to ask Soroya to draw a still scene of him standing next to the bicycle with his hands on the handlebars. "That's it," the witch asked after completing the 4 huge posters. "I'll need to add a few lines of advertising," Roland thought for a moment. "It should be a new era mount. It will be like this if I have it, and it will be like this if you have it." Below it was written, "The bicycle factory is looking for workers. The salary is good, the benefits are good, and there is a chance to get a new bicycle for free. Those who have passed the elementary education level can register at the city hall." After dealing with the bicycle posters, the prince returned to his office. Taking advantage of the fact that there was still some time before dinner, he had one of his guards call for Kyle. Now that he had finally made a breakthrough in the development of mercury fulminate, the development of a new generation of weapons could also be put on the agenda. There was no doubt that in the era of firearms, the caliber represented justice, and the rate of fire represented freedom. The greater the power, the more glory, and the more turrets, the more equality. However, there was an awkward problem. If this continued, the 2 acids produced in the laboratory would soon not be able to keep up with the consumption. For example, if he wanted to increase the rate of fire, he would have to abandon the black gunpowder, which had a lot of residue, and change it to a smokeless propellant powder, which was collodion, or a mixture of collodion and nitroglycerin. The same was true for high-power explosives. It didn't matter if he couldn't produce trinitrotoluene, TNT, he could use nitrostarch instead. Apart from its poor stability, its power was also a bit higher. No matter which of the above, they all required a large amount of high concentration of fuming nitric acid, and purifying nitric acid required a large amount of concentrated sulfuric acid, which wasn't something that the laboratory's output could meet. In other words, there was no way to use the industrial method to produce the two acids. Even if they developed a more efficient weapon, they would still fall into the predicament of having no bullets to use. When the chief alchemist entered the office, Roland said, "I have a new task for you." "Please say it," Kyle shrugged, "as long as you don't have to attend a ceremony." "I need more acid, and at present, relying solely on the chemical laboratory's output is unable to meet my needs. Therefore, your new task is to design a chemical system that can efficiently and conveniently produce the two acids." "Chemical system?" He looked somewhat confused. "Yes, it is composed of one and several complete reaction devices. As long as the raw materials are put in, it can continuously produce the finished product." Roland briefly explained the nature of industrial production. "I don't know much about this, so you can only rely on yourself to slowly figure it out." Having said that, the prince also knew that this was a very difficult task. It was likely that it would take several years of research, and even then, it might not necessarily produce any results. After all, the other could only rely on some basic reaction principles and chemical equations from the elementary chemistry. "I understand," Kyle nodded. "The things you mentioned really make me feel refreshed. Whether you can complete it or not, the two acids are something I urgently need." Roland paused. "Therefore, next month I plan to expand 3 more laboratories by the Redwater River and recruit qualified candidates from the subjects to act as experimenters. If you don't have time to teach them, you can choose a few disciples to take care of. After all, the industrial acid method is a very long research project." Probably because of the temptation of the intermediate chemistry, he readily agreed, "Yes, Your Highness." After Kyle left, Roland sighed softly. If the industrial acid method was hopeless, then he could only let Lucia follow him to purify the acid. After all, when the war came, he needed a more powerful weapon to win the victory for Border Town. When Roland opened the drawer, intending to eat some dried fish to relieve his boredom, he found that the snack drawer was empty. Stunned, he raised his head, only to see that a dried fish had been brought to his mouth. "Are you looking for this?" The blonde woman opposite him smiled. Roland bit the dried fish and couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. "I thought you would stay like this in the fog for the rest of your life." "That's also good, at least others can't see me, but I can still see you." Nightingale curled her lips. His originally somewhat depressed mood unconsciously dissipated a lot. Seeing the other's familiar appearance, he couldn't help but feel relieved. "You said before that you didn't know what kind of expression to show." "Huh. In fact, it's good to be like this. Your support is my greatest motivation." That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.